Metro TV will start in 30 seconds. The regularly scheduled meeting of the Louisville Metro Council for February 27, 2025 will please come to order. The time is currently a little after 6 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. This meeting is being held pursuant to KRS 61.826 and Council Rule 5A. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Hawkins. Present. Councilmember Shanklin. Present. Councilmember Parrish-Wright. Councilmember Herndon.
Present.
Councilmember Purvis. Present. Councilmember Leninger.
Present.
Councilmember McCraney. Here. Councilmember Reno Weber. Councilmember Owen.
Here.
Councilmember Raymond.
Here.
Councilmember Kramer. Councilmember Joseph.
Here.
Councilmember Syme. Councilmember Bast.
Here.
Councilmember Chappell.
Here.
Sorry, ma'am. Councilmember Reed. Councilmember Winkler.
Here.
Councilmember Parker. Councilmember Piagentini. Councilmember Benson.
Present.
Councilmember Rui.
Here.
Councilmember Bratcher.
Here.
Councilmember Hudson.
Here.
Councilmember Mulvey Woolridge. Councilmember.
Here.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, ma'am. Councilmember Batchon. Councilmember Ackerson.
Present.
Or, I'm sorry, President Ackerson. And Councilmember Kramer. Here. Mr. President, you have 23 and a quorum.
And let the record reflect that Councilman Ben Reno Weber has an excused absence.
So noted, sir.
Councilwoman Raymond, I believe you've got a page to introduce.
Yes, I want to welcome Ava Evans from District 10. She's just a remarkable young lady. Ava is a fifth grader at Tully Elementary School. She is a leader on a very strong quick recall team. She's a leader on the floor hockey team. She is an award-winning graphic novelist. What else? She's writing a book, you all. So when that's available for sale, I'll let you know. We want to welcome Ava Evans.
Councilwoman McCraney, Councilman Winkler, I believe you've got a page to introduce.
Yes, I am excited about our page today, who is a District 7 resident, and I will defer to Councilman Winkler to introduce him.
Yes, thank you, Councilwoman McCraney. Thank you, President Ackerson. Colleagues, I'd like to introduce you to our page tonight, Elshama Ganza. Elshama, if you want to stand up. Elshama is a fifth grade student at Zachary Taylor Elementary School, which is in District 17, but lives down the road in District 7, so go Falcons. He enjoys soccer and is part of the Zachary Taylor Elementary soccer team. One of his teachers, we asked one of his teachers to describe him, and he said that he's a strong student and an excellent leader. And my understanding is he may want to be an attorney one day when he grows up. So we've got, I think, just one attorney left currently on council. So it sounds like we can expect great things from Elshama in the years to come. As Councilman McCraney said, he and his family live just outside in District 7. And please join us in welcoming Elshama Ganza. So thank you for being here.
Councilwoman Chappell and Councilwoman Rui, I believe you've got a special guest tonight.
Our our guest is not here. Should we proceed?
You want to hold off to after addresses?
That would be wonderful if
you
we can
reached
give
out
him
to your-
time, and if he's not here at that time, then we will table. So thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, are there any addresses to council?
Yes, sir, there are.
Let me remind those addressing council to please refrain from using any profanity or making derogatory statements to council members. Madam Clerk, please call the first speaker.
Tony Curtis.
I am Tony Curtis, Executive Director of the Metropolitan Housing Coalition. I'm here to speak in opposition to two ordinances being forced upon this legislative body. I'm here in support of the children and families of Louisville. I'm here to say that a vote in favor of these ordinances is a vote to support unsafe, unhealthy, and unfair housing. I'm here to say the policies which adversely impact children was an agreed-upon line in the sand, a non-starter, a universal altruism. But tonight, I'm not so sure. Tonight, you're being given a false choice. You're being told to hastily pass an amended rental registry ordinance and a rewrite of Louisville's lead ordinance. You're being told that if you do not vote in favor of both, the Kentucky legislature will pass House Bill 173. You have become a hostage of the majority caucus of the state legislature. I remind you tonight that the lead ordinance was passed unanimously, including some of you who sit here today. This was an ordinance that was the result of the most complete stakeholder process I have witnessed. And believe it or not, the process even included landlord and real estate groups. Such groups now support preemption in the state, including the Louisville Apartment Association and the Kentucky Real Estate Investors Association. And they have now decided to turn their backs on this community and choose a disingenuous end around through the state legislature. These ordinances were hastily written and with the hope of being quickly passed. Your due diligence as a council is incomplete. These ordinances will remove proactive inspections and any responsibility from the property owners to instigate an inspection. It removes the fund created to provide relief for qualifying tenants impacted by lead mitigation efforts. It removes the registration fee that would help fund proactive inspections and testing. If the same logic were applied to restaurants and child care facilities, we would be in big trouble. Both have unannounced inspections, are listed on a public registry, and receive certifications as a result of those inspections. This is something that the sponsor of HB 173 should know about, as he operates a child care facility, short-term rentals, and evidently a restaurant. Why should rental properties not be subject to the same public scrutiny? The written purpose of the legislation is misleading, so I corrected it and offer an amendment. It should read as follows. The purpose of this section is to maybe prevent, and it might protect children from some lead-based hazards that we do not turn a blind eye to during their occupancy of residential properties, but no burden on landlords. And it will not create and preserve safe, healthy housing in Louisville. We could take a stand today and say that if you want to do business as a landlord in our city, then the space you provide must be fully inspected for lead paint and properly mitigated. If not, you are in the wrong business. In conclusion, your vote tonight is a choice that each and every one of you have to live with. If you vote in favor of the proposed lead ordinance, you're choosing to use children as our community's frontline lead detectors. That is unacceptable, and I know for myself that I would not want that to be associated with my name. Thank you.
Thank you. John Cullen.
Thank you. I'm John Cullen. I'm a resident of District 10, and I'm here to tell you today that you have been misled. You've been misled into thinking that you're stuck with the choice of amending our poisoning ordinance or getting nothing. I do not think that that's true, and after 7 weeks of meetings on the subject, I have yet to see the due diligence that proves it. I've met with Frankfort Republican legislators, local landlords, landlord groups like CREA's lobbyist, Will Carley, members of this body, and have yet to see proof that proves this. We have to accept a really diminished bill or nothing. The most important provision that will be lost with the amended ordinances is the proactive testing before a child is poisoned. Not even House Bill 173 does this damage, but the amended ordinance does. It allows landlords to continue to keep renters in the dark. Late yesterday, each of you received an email from me with some of the due diligence needed. It comes from our health department, our county attorney's office. I ask that you review it, continue to ask for more expert information before rushing to judgment. I myself think that much of the provisions of our local ordinance can be implemented even if House Bill 173 passes. It may take some creativity in adjusting, but I think it can be done, and I urge you to receive the best technical and legal advice available so you can make an informed decision instead of buying into this artificial timeline forced upon us by Ryan Dotson, the sponsor of the bill. The process over the past 7 weeks has been led by a small but loud group of irate and dangerously misinformed landlords presenting themselves as experts on lead poisoning. Doing the wrong thing for 56 years does not make you an expert at anything except continuing the deceptive practices that allowed lead poisoning to flourish even 47 years after it was banned. How do I know that this small group is behind it? I mean, they're not lined up here to speak publicly. Public transparency is not the last thing they want. 2.5 years ago, they tried to offer arguments, and apparently no one found it compelling because this measure passed unanimously. I know because I hear the same misinformation, the same scare tactics, and even the same bogus anecdotes being repeated by lawmakers. In fact, at last Tuesday's committee hearing, where this ordinance was passed, the anecdote was repeated that was shared with me a couple of weeks ago, I'm sure by the same people. I was told by someone that I was told in 1969 by the government to use lead paint, and now they want me to take it out. Marxism. This is not the people that we want teaching us about modern lead poisoning prevention techniques. But we are all victims. Renters, owners, landlords. The OG villains, to borrow a marketing phrase from one of them, Sherwin-Williams, have covered the earth with toxic lead, poisoning hundreds of millions of children so far. And this will continue until we do something about it. I rented apartments for 20 years. I know it can be done because I've done it. You've got written statements that exceed my time allotment, but in conclusion, I just want to stress that this is no time to stick our heads in the sand and perpetuate this problem or be bluffed into cutting our own throats. Please have the confidence to vote no on these amendments. At least take the time to digest and discuss it with the best information available, determine what changes, if any, might be considered, stop the cycle of fear, deception, and strategic ignorance, and we will all benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Christian Bryan.
Hi there, I'm Kristen Byrne. I'm the Executive Director at Bluegrass Center for Autism. There's nothing to vote on tonight. This is simply an introduction to an organization that has been part of this community for 14 years and to tell you about our history and what our current needs are in the community. Bluegrass Center for Autism began in the basement of St. Andrew's Church in 2010, originally known as the Academy at St. Andrews. It was founded by a parent of a child with disabilities, a special educator, and a speech therapist. 3 individuals who saw a gap in services and stepped up to fill it. In that first year, we served just 12 clients with a dedicated staff of 10. Very quickly, we realized the needs of our participants were greater than we initially anticipated. Families with children with autism were knocking on our doors, seeking intensive individualized support. In response, we established our first ABA-based classroom, or Applied Behavior Analysis. Applied Behavior Analysis is the only scientifically proven treatment for autism, helping individuals develop critical life and communication skills. By 2012, thanks to the generosity of the Metz family, we expanded into donated space at Mid-City Mall, serving our teens and young adults. The following year, with support from COSAIR for Kids, we established our campus on Bluegrass Parkway in J-Town. Around that time, funding sources for autism services, particularly ABA therapy, were becoming more widely available. This pivotal moment allowed us to transition from a school-based tuition model to a behavioral health model, officially becoming the Bluegrass Center for Autism. This shift made our services more accessible to families in need by enabling coverage through insurance and Medicaid, ensuring more individuals in our community could receive the care that they deserve. Fast forward to today, Bluegrass Center for Autism now has 4 locations across Louisville and serves clients from 37 zip codes from Kentucky and Indiana. We provide over 2,600 hours of individualized therapy on a weekly basis through a staff of 96. Despite all of this, the demand for our services continues to grow. Over the past 2 decades, the prevalence of autism has risen dramatically. According to the CDC, the current rate of autism is 1 in 36, which is a staggering increase from just 20 years ago, when the estimated rate of autism was 1 in 150 children. ASD is found across all racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic groups, and it occurs 4 times more in boys than it does in girls. Kentucky Medicaid alone identifies over 17,000 children diagnosed with autism in the state. Over the past 14 years, our demand for services has grown, and so does the urgency to expand access to our high-quality ABA therapy. While daily operations are sustained through billed services, facility expansions and program enhancements rely entirely on community support. Over the past 14 years, we've made a lasting impact thanks to those who have recognized the need and took action. Today, more than 350 individuals remain on our wait list, highlighting the critical need for expansion. With your support, we hope that we can grow and enhance life-changing services that so many children and adults with autism need in our community. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to connecting with you in the future.
Thank you. Marquita Forrest. Marquita Forrest. Marley Harrington.
Hello, my name is Marley Harrington, and I'm a student at DuPont Manual High School. I participate in a research project through Spalding University with the West Louisville Math and Science Project. During this project, we researched local lead poisoning and its impacts on children in Louisville, which is why I'm here today. According to the CDC, around 500,000 children in the United States have blood lead levels that meet or exceed the threshold considered dangerous. Here in Louisville, nearly 10,000 local children have tested with high lead levels. The highest risk for lead exposure among children are in the 40203, 40210, 40211, 40212, and 40215 zip code areas, with children in the northwest area of the city being 10 times more likely to be exposed to dangerous lead levels. This also happens to be where the majority of our Black population lives. However, lead exposure is an issue across the city. Lead exposure can cause irreversible damage to a child's physical and mental well-being, with a myriad of negative health aspects, including permanent brain damage, developmental delays, and in severe cases, death. These symptoms not only disrupt a child's home life, but also impact their performance at school. Since these symptoms can be hard to identify as lead poisoning, many students are misdiagnosed or mislabeled, preventing them from receiving the proper help they need. Louisville's lead registry is an essential component of addressing this health crisis amongst our most vulnerable population. Landlords have the responsibility to ensure that their properties are free from hazardous neurotoxins that cause irreparable damage to children. The registry is a tool that the city can use to ensure that both landlords and tenants understand and have a process for handling its dangerous materials. By rolling back on the current requirements, the city will have less oversight, and landlords will not be required to even test for lead unless a child is already exposed and tested positive. This means that action will only be taken after the harm is done. Additionally, removing tenant protections against landlord retaliation will prevent tenants from being able to request lead abatement safely, further placing children in harm's way. I urge you to vote no on this ordinance and allow the lead registry to stand as it is, not just for the health of our children, but for the future of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Kevin Toomey. Kevin Toomey. Deborah O'Gorman.
First, I want to say good evening and welcome to the family, all the new people. Y'all get to know me very well. I'm Deborah O'Gorman. I run a support group for epilepsy called SIEGE, Support Epilepsy in Guiding Epileptics. And I had epilepsy when I was a child. It went away. In 1995, it came back at Humana. I lost my job there for walking around the room, pinning my boss against the wall, French kissing him. When I woke up, an hour later, Deborah, you have to go. In 1995, our president, George Bush, started an ADA, American Disability Act. Epilepsy wasn't on there till 1997. So I couldn't sue anybody. I lost my job at Section 8 for doing jumping jacks. Went to the University of Louisville. I was studied by very good doctors, Gruenthal and Dr. Roy Meckler. I was the first VNS patient. I've had 3 lawsuits in the city of Louisville because people said, you don't look epileptic. You can't walk, talk, take your clothes off. I was wearing this thing. Medical ID. We do not have what in the city of Louisville, ADA. In 1995, George Bush started ADA. Our mayor, we have now, with 4 deputy mayors. The city of Louisville is the 28th largest city in the United States. I'm on the convention board. We're doing a $4 million to the largest fairgrounds, indoor fairgrounds, second largest convention center. You just had some women talk to you about autism. 1 out of 30-something children, 1 out of 25 people have epilepsy, and there's 40 types now. I have buried 15 people in 25 years. 1 out of every 100 people die from epilepsy. Do I look epileptic? What's an epileptic look like? Every shoe you have is made of rubber soles, because that's full of electricity. I trained Tark Bus for 25 years. Barry Barker did an interview about me. He called me intense. Me, intense? I've been called gregarious. I've gotten 2 laws passed because I don't take no. I don't want money. Yeah, I do with state fair time. I don't charge money. I charge love and happiness. You've got homeless people out there with neurology problems, but we do not have an ADA. We do not have an American Disability Act representative for the city of Louisville. Oh, we made $28,000 for the farm machinery show. $28 million, I'm sorry. And they didn't charge people money to come in this year. We had the largest indoor fairgrounds with a $4 million renovation. We lost Yum. We got to get that taken care of. You all went through a major gas leak. Believe me, when we have gas leaks with our brains, y'all don't want to be around us. I want to train more people, and I do it every day. You run a magnet across my heart with the VNS. Every time you turn the light switch on, Thomas Edison was epileptic. You better thank him. The African Americans, Harriet Tubman was epileptic. I can go on. Yes, she was, sweetheart. And I'm working on a book about epilepsy. The Underground Railroad's on that beautiful new movie. I'll shut up. We need an ADA. And I went to Congressman McGarvey knows about this, the governor. We need an ADA. These people everyone has some sort of neurology problem. We do not have an ADA in Louisville.
Thank you. Tom Fitzgerald.
Mr. President, council members, I'm Tom Fitzgerald. I'm a Louisville resident. For 37 years, I directed the Kentucky Resources Council, a nonprofit providing legal aid on environmental issues. Here in Jefferson County, I helped negotiate Cornerstone 2020. I helped to develop and then defend the STAR program when the rubber tank companies tried to preempt it in Frankfurt, and I authored much of your Chapter 120 in your Metro Code. I've had the privilege of representing neighborhoods in Okolona, Irish Hill, Valley Station, California, Shawnee, Chickasaw, and many others over the years. As I told the wonderful council clerk when we talked today, I am not here to talk about the 2 rental ordinances that you're considering. I am here to share something that I've learned after the 43 years that I was a lobbyist in Frankfurt and my 45 years representing community groups and local governments on some tough environmental issues. It's about actions and consequences. There's a children's book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, and it teaches us that if you give a mouse a cookie, the next thing they'll ask for is a glass of milk, and on and on. It's about actions and consequences. If you give in to the preemption threat of House Bill 173, it's highly unlikely you will ever restore what you lose or repair the damage done. If you give in to the preemption threat of House Bill 173, you might as well turn this city over to the most vocal and the least responsible of any interest group, and to Frankfurt, since today it's a public health ordinance, tomorrow it's a moratorium on middle housing, and on whenever this community seeks to make advances in the health or quality of life and some interest group is offended. Give that mouse a cookie, and there's no end to that cycle. My 3 minutes of time is nearly up, but it is never the right time to cede your power and your authority to protect kids. It is never the right time to reward those who would rather spend money on lobbying than on doing the right thing. It is always the right time to push back against legislative overreach by a few members of a body that professes to respect local control in governance. For the advocates of House Bill 173, you might want to rethink your position, because assessing and correcting hazards protects you as well from damage awards that could bankrupt you if a child who lives in your rental is poisoned and you didn't take steps to assess and correct. Finally, to the General Assembly, a collegial body I deeply respect, and where for decades I worked beginning in 1978 in a bipartisan way to improve Kentucky's environmental health. Don't let yourself become entangled by those who want you to preemptively override local decisions that they couldn't or didn't win on their merits. Give that mouse a cookie, and you will have to live with the erosion of public confidence and trust that comes with it. Mr. President, members of the council, thank you very much.
Thank you. Rashawn Martin.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Rayshan Martin, and I'm the Executive Director of St. John Center. I'm not here to ask for anything today, really here to celebrate and uplift, if you will, what is possible when we address issues that are heavy on our heart, right, and that are plaguing our community by addressing the root cause of those issues. St. John Center is a homeless service agency. We've been providing homeless services for 38 years, and the root cause of homelessness is a lack of affordable, safe, housing. With Metro Council's support, we are working to be a bigger part of that solution by adding to the housing stock. A couple of years ago, you guys allocated $32 million for permanent supportive housing in response to the city's pleas, for more housing, solutions to get people off of the street. With that support, with that funding, we have built housing, and we're here today to invite you guys to stand with us and see what is possible, and see what we have done and what we have built together. We have built 80 units of permanent supportive housing, and permanent supportive housing is for people who are the most vulnerable, people who are living with disabling conditions, people who are have been unhoused for too long. So together, we built this housing facility, and we are going to provide housing, and we are going to provide support for those individuals. We are going to we are going to cut the ribbon and have this housewarming party on March 25th at 10:30. So first and foremost, I want to invite you to that because, again, that is a solution that we have built together, and we could not have done it without your support. In this season, we need a lot more of your support, There's so many, we all see the problem of homelessness growing in our community. It's in our streets, Marty Polio will tell us about how the kids aren't being successful in school because they are unhoused, TARC tells us about, the challenges that they have getting people from, people who are not housed or people who are unhoused to the places that they need to get to. Housing continues to come up, because housing is the solution to so many of our problems. Last year, we served 4,000 people in the agency, and we did that across 3 programs. We have our day shelter, where we try to provide all of the supportive services and make them accessible, to people. In our work last year, of those 4,000 people, 50% of them had a physical or mental health, disability. That number has grown since I have been at St. John Center. So just in 3 years, we've seen that number grow way too much, and that is because people are living without housing, without their basic needs being met for far too long, People are staying unhoused longer than they ever have before because we do not have enough housing. We hold ourselves accountable to Metro Council and to the city for the funding that you guys provide so that we can operate the day shelter, so we can provide some rental assistance. That rental assistance goes, it's not going as far as it should, because okay, I digress. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your support. We need your leadership more now than ever. Please join us in this celebratory moment. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. President, that concludes the addresses to council.
Councilman Chappell is your guest here.
My guest does not. Do I have to make a motion to table, or do I just
Nope,
request
we're just going to move on.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Clerk, next we have the approval of council minutes for the regular meetings of February 13th, 2025. Are there any corrections or deletions? May I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second before us. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? The minutes are approved as written. Next, we have the approval of the following committee minutes, all in 2025. The regular committee of the whole, February 13th. Regular planning and zoning committee, February 18th. Regular labor and economic development committee, February 18th. Regular public works committee, February 18th. Regular government oversight, audit, and appointments committee, February 18th. Regular equity, community affairs, housing, health, and education committee, February 19th. Regular appropriations committee, February 19th. Regular ad hoc committee on efficiencies of boards and commissions, February 19th. Regular parks and sustainability committee, February 20th. Regular Budget Committee, February 20th. Are there any corrections or deletions?
Motion second.
The items properly before us. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing no opposition, the minutes are approved as written. Madam Clerk, do we have any communications to the council?
Yes, sir, we do.
Please
Dear
read
Pre-
those.
Dear President Ackerson, in accordance with the ordinance, I'm appointing the following to the Code Enforcement Board. Naya Oliu Fallow, a new appointment, term expires February the 9th, 2028. Your prompt action on this appointment is most appreciated. Sincerely, Craig Greenberg, Mayor. Dear President Ackerson, in accordance with the Human Relations Advocacy Board ordinance, I'm appointing the following. Yvonne Jones, a new appointment, term expires September the 30th, 2026. Your prompt action on this appointment is most appreciated. Sincerely, Craig Greenberg, Mayor. Dear President Ackerson, in accordance with the Kentuckiana Works Greater Louisville Workforce Development Board ordinance, I'm appointing the following. Bill Miller, a new appointment, term expires March 21st, 2028. Your prompt action on this appointment is most appreciated. Sincerely, Craig Greenberg, Mayor. Dear President Ackerson, in accordance with the ordinance, I'm appointing and reappointing the following to the Louisville Downtown Management District Board. Todd Warren, a reappointment, term expires March the 23rd, 2028. George Timmerine, a new appointment, term expires March 23rd, 2028. Your prompt action on this appointment and reappointment is most appreciated. Sincerely, Craig Greenberg, Mayor. Dear President Ackerson, in accordance with the Housing Authority Board ordinance, I am appointing the following to the board. Joseph Busatari, a new appointment, term expires August 15th, 2026. Your prompt action on this appointment is most appreciated. Sincerely, Craig Greenberg, Mayor. Dear President Ackerson, in accordance with the ordinance, I am appointing the following to the Tree Advisory Committee. Rebecca Kosrach, new appointment, term expires November the 29th, 2025. Your prompt action on this appointment is most appreciated. Sincerely, Craig Greenberg, Mayor. Dear President Ackerson, in accordance with the Waterworks ordinance, I am appointing the following. Kenneth Marshall, a new appointment, term expires April the 30th, 2029. William Summers IV, reappointment, term expires April the 30th, 2029. Your prompt action on these appointments is most appreciated. Sincerely, Craig Greenberg, Mayor. Read in full.
Those appointments needing council approval should be forwarded to the Government Oversight, Audit, and Appointments Committee. The next item on our business will be the consent calendar. The consent calendar comprises of items 23 through 46. Are there any additions or deletions? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, a second reading of those items.
The following legislation was forwarded from the Appropriations Committee. Item 23, an ordinance rescinding ordinance number 203, Series 24, an ordinance appropriating $50,000 from District 6 Neighborhood Development Funds through the Office of Management and Budget to Jacket Nation, Inc. for gym equipment for Central High School. The following legislation was forwarded from the Budget Committee. Item 24, an ordinance amending ordinance number 100, Series 2024, relating to the fiscal year 2024-2025 operating budget by transferring $10,000 from the Neighborhood Development Fund, District 1, to the Louisville Metro Council General Operations District 1. The following legislation was forwarded from the Equity, Community Affairs, Housing, Health, and Education Committee. Item 25, a resolution honoring Shirley May Beard by dedicating the corner of Clay Street and Lambton Street as Shirley May's Way in her honor. Item 26, a resolution honoring Mrs. Thelma May Goff by naming the corner of 45th Street and Garland Avenue as Thelma May Goff Way in her honor. Item 27, a resolution honoring Carl R. Hines, Sr. by dedicating the corner of Southwest Dern Parkway and Dell Park Terrace as Carl R. Hines Sr. Way, Kentucky House Representative, in his honor. Item 28, a resolution honoring Jerry L. Macon Sr. by naming the northwest corner of 40th Street and West Broadway as Jerry L. Macon Sr. Way, West Broadway Church of Christ, in his honor. The following legislation was forwarded from the Government Oversight and Appointments Committee. Item 29, an ordinance amending Louisville Metro Code of Ordinances, LMCO, Section 38.61, related to the Board of Directors for the Urban Services District. Item 30, appointment of Dion Templeton to the Affordable Housing Trust Board Fund. Term expires December the 31st, 2027. Item 31, appointment of Jerome Baker to the Juneteenth Jubilee Commission. Term expires April the 29th, 2027. Item 32, an appointment of Dr. John Chenault to the Juneteenth Jubilee Commission. Term expires April the 29th, 2027. Item 33, appointment of Melissa Jacoby to the Louisville Downtown Management District Board. Term expires March 3rd, 2028. Item 34, appointment of Joshua Mosser to the Louisville Downtown Management District Board. Term expires March 3rd, 2028. Item 35, appointment of Kelly Stollard Watson to the Louisville Downtown Management District Board. Term expires March 3rd, 2028. Item 36, reappointment of Matt Ayers to the Louisville Downtown Management District Board. Term expires April the 15th, 2028. Item 37, a reappointment of Sean Crofton to the Louisville Downtown Management District Board. Term expires April the 15th, 2028. Item 38, reappointment of Josh Zick to the Louisville Downtown Management District Board. Term expires December the 2nd, 2027. The following legislation was forwarded from the Labor, Economic, and Development Committee. Item 39, a resolution pursuant to the capital and operating budget ordinances approving the appropriation to fund the following non-competitively negotiated professional service contract for the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods concerning evaluation and analysis regarding the Louisville Youth Continuum of Care Project. McNary and Associates LLC, $99,539. Item 40, a resolution approving the granting of local incentives to Willa USA LLC and any subsequent assignees or approved affiliates thereof pursuant to KRS Chapter 154, Subchapter 32. Item 41, a resolution approving the granting of local incentives to Houston Johnson, Inc. and any subsequent assignees or approved affiliates thereof pursuant to KRS Chapter 154, Subchapter 32. Item 42, a resolution determining the property located at 1407 Heifer Road, parcel ID number 0023002500000 as surplus and not needed for a governmental purpose and authorizing its transfer. The following legislation was forwarded from Parks and Sustainability Committee. Item 43, a resolution pursuant to the capital and operating budget ordinances approving the appropriation to fund the following non-competitively negotiated professional service contract for Metro Parks concerning consulting services for Park for All Planning and Reporting, Pros Consulting, Inc., $118,000. The following legislation was forwarded from the Planning and Zoning Committee. Item 44, an ordinance relating to the closure of approximately 220 linear feet of right-of-way located along Shipley Lane containing approximately 8,684 square feet and being a Louisville Metro, case number 24 Street Closure 0026. Item 45, an ordinance relating to the closure of approximately 300 linear feet of improved alleyway between South Brook Street and South Floyd Street containing approximately 6,113 square feet and being a Louisville Metro, case number 24 Street Closure 0031. Item 46, an ordinance relating to the detailed district development plan for property located at 5024 South 3rd Street containing approximately 0.1463 acres and being in Louisville Metro, case number 22 DDP 0079. Read in full.
Items brought before us, consent calendar requires a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please open the voting.
Councilmember Mulvey Woolridge.
Yes.
So I've got Councilman Hudson and Councilman Reed is yes. Councilman Winkler, are you having an issue? Councilman Kramer.
These computers, I'm telling you.
It is definitely the computer. It's running extra slow today, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Shanklin's a yes. Councilwoman Hawkins? Are you a yes? No, you have a yes. Councilwoman Hawkins is a yes. Thank you. Mr. President, you have 25 yes. You have 25 yes votes.
The consent calendar passes. The next item on our business will be old business. Madam Clerk, a reading of item 48.
An ordinance appropriating $15,000 from neighborhood development funds in the following manner. $3,000 from District 24, $1,000 each from Districts 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 9, 11, 13, 21, and 23, and $500 from Districts 7, 15, 16, and 20 through the Office of Management and Budget to Friends of the Jefferson County Public Library, Inc. for costs associated with the Fresh Start Expungement Program, as amended, read in full.
Second.
The item's brought before us. I believe, Councilman Parker, this came out of your committee.
Thank you. I will defer to Councilman Dan Syme, who I think is going to speak to this.
Councilman Syme.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Teamed up with Councilman Ben Reno Weber on this situation and several other sponsors, and this is for an expungement bill that helps to pay for expungements for qualifying misdemeanors and felonies. A lot of you may not know how hard it is when you come out of jail to get a job and you have to check on there, I've been convicted of a felony, and it might be a minor felony, but he still don't get that job or she don't get that job because you had to check that mark. And we're trying to help folks with that. When you come out of jail, you don't have much money to afford an attorney. The List Library Group helps to afford the attorney. The Jefferson County Public Library Incorporated is the Fresh Start Expungement Program. The benefit of this, one of the things, I know a personal story, a fella was at a school and he'd been coaching for 17 years. and he was a good coach, and he was able to affect a lot of kids' lives. And well, he wanted to move up to head coach of the school. He was a volunteer at the time. Well, they had to do some records check, and 17 years prior to that, he had a conviction for cannabis, and they told him he had to leave. It didn't matter how many kids he had affected and helped during his 17-year tenure, but he had to leave because he had that infraction on his record, and it was expungible. What this group does is they pay an attorney. There's no fees go for people in the office, and no administrative fees. These fees go directly to the attorney, and there's a $40 fee for certificate for eligibility that goes to the state police. As it is right now, we're asking for $25,680. We have current sponsors of $15,000. With the current support we have right now, we can expunge 62.5 people that's got these on their record. We can do that. With the full support, we can have 107 expungements. A lot of folks have given already. I'd like to have give an opportunity for you to help finish this out. I think we need another around $10,000 to help these folks with expungements, and I'm asking if we could probably get some more support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Piagentini, you are next in the queue.
Thank you. 500 from District 19, please.
Councilwoman Raymond?
1,000 from District 10, please.
Councilman Winkler?
500 from 17.
Councilman Reed?
750 from District 16.
Councilwoman Ruhi?
Sorry, Councilman Reed, you actually have given to this, you have given $500.
Yes,
so
I know.
far. You want to add another 750?
Yes, I would.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you.
If Councilman Simon will take it? Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, 750 from 21.
You're adding 750 on
Sure.
top of what you've already added?
Sure.
Thank you.
Councilman Herndon?
1,000 from District 4.
Councilman Hudson?
500 from 23.
And again, sir, you've given, okay.
Councilwoman Purvis?
Have I given previously?
Yes, ma'am.
What is it?
You have given $1,000.
Oh, I'm at my max. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Parrish Wright?
I'll match my colleagues and add 750.
Additional. Very
Thank
good.
you.
Councilwoman Parker? Councilman Bratcher?
750 from 22.
Councilwoman Bast?
500 from 14.
So the total right now, we're at $22,750. The ask is for $25,680, and that leaves $2,930.
Councilman Lininger?
$1,000, please, for mine.
Will you do me a favor and say that on the mic so I can I'm sorry. Thank you.
Councilman Benson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to add $500 to mine already.
Where are we
Thank
at
you.
now, Madam Clerk?
There is a outstanding balance of $930.
Councilman
Did you add
Batchon?
mine on ours?
I did get yours, ma'am.
Okay.
$500 from District 1, yes, ma'am.
Councilman Batchon?
I'll do the 930.
That's it.
Councilman Sine, you hit your 25.
Point of,
You have the mic, sir.
can I say thank you?
You can say whatever you like.
Thank you. This is what Metro government is all about. Thank you so much.
Motion for the amendment.
Any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, the amendment requires a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition?
Aye.
Hearing no opposition, it passes. We now have the amended version before us. Any further discussion on this? Seeing no one in the queue, this is an ordinance that requires a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, open the voting.
Councilmember Mulvey Woolridge?
Yes.
Can I just call your name? Councilman Reed? I don't know what's wrong.
Folks, for years I've complained about this system. I'm glad that's now affecting the rest of you. We might get something done now.
Councilman Owen, I'm not getting yours either. Okay, great, thank you. Mr. President, you have 25 yes votes.
The ordinance is adopted. Madam Clerk, reading of item number 49.
An ordinance relating to the zoning of properties located at 4217 Taylor Boulevard, 1059, 1057R, and 1061 Lyndhurst Avenue, containing approximately 0.75 acres and being in Louisville Metro, case number 24, zone 0117, as amended, read in full.
Motion, second.
Items brought before us. Let's see, this came out of Councilman Owen committee.
Thank you, President. This is in District 21, and I'll let Councilwoman Rui speak to it in just a minute. It's an automotive specialist company, car repair company that's been operating out of a single-family house on 3 tracks. And this is just rezoning 2 of the tracks to bring the parcels into compliance, zoning compliance. Binding element number 8 stipulates the hour of operations shall be between 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and be limited to 9 bays. We also, in committee, we passed the standing bided element by acclamation, and this was passed out of committee 7-0. So, Councilwoman Rui, would you like to speak to this?
Sure. This is an auto repair site. It's located on an alley, which is really interesting. So all the doors open onto the alley. And they've been very good neighbors for years, and they're just trying to bring their zoning into compliance, and I have no objections. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing no one in the queue, this is an ordinance that requires a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, open the voting.
Councilmember Mulvey Woolridge?
Yes.
Council President?
I'll be a yes, but again,
It is running super slow today. We're so
one more
sorry.
flaw in our system.
Councilmember Rui? Councilmember Parker? Councilmember Reed? Mr. President, you have 25 yes votes.
That ordinance passes and is adopted. Madam Clerk, a reading of item number 50.
An ordinance amending the guidelines for the New Lou Review Overlay District as set forth in Chapter 162 of the Louisville Metro Code of Ordinances, LMCO. Read in full.
The item is brought before us. Councilman Owen, this came out of your committee.
Thank you, President Ackerson. So in August 2024, Metro Council approved Ordinance 080-24, which requested review of the New Lou Overlay District, which was last reviewed in 2015. The goal was to bring the overlay district into conformity with Plan 2040 and the 2022 updates that have been made to the Butchertown, Phoenix Hill, and New Lou neighborhood development plans, so to get those all in alliance. The New Lou district met and developed these revisions through a series of meetings in October, November, and December of 2024. There were 6 public meetings in all. The vast changes and exhaustive additions were approved by the New Lou Review Overlay District 6-0. For those of you who don't know, overlay districts are focused on design elements and are not for a property's use, but on design, and are maintained within the Land Development Code, while design guidelines are included in Chapter 162 governing overlay districts. There are 4 overlay districts in LMCO: Waterfront Development Corporation, Bardstown Road, Baxter, Downtown, CBD, and New Lou. The main emphasis of an overlay district is to preserve the character of the neighborhood with new construction. This New Lou is in District 4, so I will ask Councilman Herndon to speak to this. Thank you.
As Councilman Owens said, the overlay committee voted on this 6-0. This could not be closer to the people. Overlay districts are created by the people in those areas for themselves. And I would ask for my colleagues, especially those who believe that local is always better, to vote to support this.
Councilman Piacentini, you're next in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not going to encourage anybody to vote against it. I am going to vote against it on principle related to overlay districts, not so much this particular process in the New Lou overlay district. The issue here is there are, as just indicated, 4 overlay districts. So these 4 districts have additional protections and local requirements that slow down and in many cases prevent development from going off in order under the auspices of things like comporting with the neighborhood and comporting with a certain look and feel. We've had these issues, and I'll look around this room, there's 26 council members, of which 23 of them, if I'm doing the math right, because I think 2 of those overlay districts are in the same district, council district, do not have any of these in your districts. So you are beholden only to the Planning Commission, and when we have advocated or voiced concerns, at least I know it in my area and areas of colleagues of mine, about developments that violate a look and feel, violate a neighborhood plan. I even had the Planning Commission literally ignore a neighborhood development plan and acknowledge openly that they didn't like that plan, so they voted to violate it and put a development in there that violated that neighborhood development plan. So if we're not, and at the same time, I hear council members, including many of those who have these districts have these overlay districts in their council districts, saying that we need an easier process to develop property. We need more property. We need more housing. So we can't have it both ways. We can't say advocate for easier and more quicker ways to develop and then advocate and continue a process of having these overlay districts in specific areas, which in some cases, I'm going to say not Nulu in this particular case, but in other cases, see some of the slowest and most costly and difficult processes to develop. So we either have to do it for everybody and start doing these overlay districts across the city and acknowledge there are looks and feels and local issues that apply in all 26 districts, or we need to stop doing this and move forward with a general standard that the Planning Commission already applies when they have things like neighborhood development plans and these types of things. So I'm going to be a no, but it's not, again, I'm not going to encourage anybody else to vote no. I'm just going to say that I don't have a process with the Nulu process particularly. I just have an issue more fundamentally moving forward with these overlay districts. So I'm going to be a no. Mr. President, thank you.
Councilman Kramer, you're next in the queue. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. When it came out of committee, my initial thought was, the committee voted yes. And typically, they do their due diligence, and but in this particular instance, when it came out, the first question I asked was so what's the rub? Like, what's the big deal? And then it was like, so what's the difference between an overlay district and a design development? Because there was a specific case in my district where there was a planned development. It was pretty clear what the folks in you talk about local control. It's pretty clear that the folks in the neighborhood in 2017, so it's not like they just did this yesterday, had put together a development plan, brought that forward. The Planning Commission, there was some discussion around that. When it got to the council level, there were members of this body who were saying, oh, but we need this or that in that particular place, regardless of what the design development said. And it was like, well, so I stood up for that. I said, no, that if there's a design development in place, that, we should be respectful of that. So when it came to this one, I was like, okay, so what's the difference? And the difference is this isn't a design development plan. This is an overlay district, and that's a very, very different thing. This sets up a whole new board. It sets up a whole new group of people. And to Councilman Piagentini's point, it creates advantages. It creates winners and losers in Louisville, which I think is incredibly unfortunate, that some districts will have better protections. Some districts will be better able to protect their design development plans than other districts. And I'm struggling. I think Councilman Piagentini's on to something. If we're going to do this, then we should do it metro-wide, which is precisely what the Planning Commission is supposed to be doing in the first place. And haphazardly creating these, I think, is a bit problematic. So I'm afraid I've moved to a no.
Councilman Winkler, you're next to the queue, and maybe you could address
I will
the
address
issue
this
of,
specifically.
This is not something that we did previously.
Correct. So, Councilman Kramer, this overlay district exists already. So we're not creating a new layer here. We're not, any vote against this doesn't do anything to eliminate, send a signal, do anything to your overlay district. That was previously approved. All we're approving here is updated guidelines that coincide with Plan 2040. A no vote is, not only is it not even a protest vote, it sort of creates a policy that's incongruent with Plan 2040. So I think if we want to have a broader discussion about overlay districts, that's perfectly fine. We should have that. But this is not the piece of legislation to do that on. I mean, it's just wrong. Thank you.
Councilman Herndon, you're next in the queue.
2 of the 4 districts, overlay districts, are in my district. I would ask, I know that home rule cities and homeowners associations have similar restrictive guidelines. Are the no votes also in favor of not having those as well? It has been suggested that not only are folks not wanting to amend this one, but they would like to have them gotten rid of entirely. Is that correct? Would that be correct? That we just get, is that part of the philosophy?
I don't think there's an answer to that. That was a jab. And I don't think, if someone wants to chime in on that, they can chime in on it. But first, next in the queue is Councilman Owen.
So I have been extremely vocal about trying to reduce the development timeline, and I am 100% committed to doing that. I think we're well on our way to identifying many of the things that we can do to make that process quicker. I think of all the things that we can focus on to try to slow down or speed up development, we're talking about incremental at best. And so for me, I've spoken about trying to reduce that development timeline almost ad nauseum since I've been here. And to me, this is not, that would be so incremental in that process that's not the way to focus on this particular, these overlay districts. Thank you.
Councilman Piagentini, you're next in the queue.
Thank you. Allow me to differentiate. First of all, HOAs only apply to the land that the homeowners in that HOA own. Overlay districts apply to and give control of people that are on those boards properties they do not own. So, for example, I live in an HOA. We are only regulating ourselves. The second you step outside of the property that we own, we are subject to the regular planning commission process. As far as the home rule cities, there's, I believe, 8, maybe 7, 8, Kevin, that have zoning authority. Yeah. And of those, they only have zoning authority. They do not have then overlay districts on top of those zoning authorities. They have essentially the same process that the Planning Commission has on evaluating properties related to proper zoning, and that's it. They don't then have overlay districts on top of the zoning regulations. So so the home rule cities don't have this, HOAs don't have this. This is completely unique to 4 districts. And again, I respect Councilman Owen's point of view that this may not be the issue, and yet I do see a correlation in at least some of these neighborhoods of the lack of development. We've looked at home building, both multifamily and single family across the county. Many of the districts that have this have some of the lowest levels of development also, of residential development. So not all of them. So, and again, I'm not encouraging anybody else to vote no, because I do think procedurally the procedure was fine. I'm just more bringing up the issue of overlay districts. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Herndon.
I want to agree with Councilman Owen. I'm also very much, and also other sidebar conversations recently about this, I'm also very much in favor of hastening the process to get things done. As I said before, I want nice things faster. And if there are things that we can do to change other ordinances or other procedures to make that happen, to have everybody have their say, and to have developers, preservationists, neighbors, everything, I want to have that faster. I think we all want nicer things faster, so I will work with anyone here to help make that possible.
Seeing no one else in the queue, this is a ordinance that requires a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, open the roll.
Councilmember Mulvey Woolridge. So you're saying no?
Sorry.
Oh, now I can hear you. What are you saying?
Yeah. No.
Thank you. Councilmember Betshon,
I've got the circle of death over here on my computer, so I say no.
you're going to say no? Thank you. Councilmember Rui? Yes, ma'am. Yes. Councilmember Reed? All right. One moment. 1 second, okay? Okay. Mr. President, you have 15 yes votes and 9 no votes.
The ordinance is adopted. Madam Clerk.
Give me one.
The ordinance passes and is adopted. Madam Clerk, a reading of item number 51.
An ordinance amending Chapter 156 of the Louisville Metro Code of Ordinances, LMCO, to make the violations of the Land Development Code, LDC, with respect to exterior property areas, code enforcement, property maintenance code violations. Read in full.
The item is brought before us. Councilman Owen, this also came out of committee.
Yeah, I'm not going to speak too much to this. I'm going to turn it over to Councilman Hudson. But this is an ordinance all about efficiency, allowing our departments to more efficiently do their job. So, Councilman Hudson, if you'd like to talk about it.
Yes, so I'll start off with it's not Doge, but it is efficient. So, in a matter of an example, might be the best way to describe what this does. Let's say one of these fine people call Metro 311 and say, my neighbor has a boat parked in the yard, the grass is 3 feet tall, can you do something about it? Metro sends a code enforcement officer out, and they cite the homeowner for the 3 foot tall grass, and then tell the homeowner, I can't do anything about the boat in the front yard. That's a zoning violation. You'll have to have a zoning enforcement officer come out for that. What this ordinance does is allow cross-pollination between code enforcement and zoning enforcement and allow them to each do the other's enforcement. Does that make sense? So there's about 50 code enforcement officers. There are 4 zoning officers. We had a great conversation in committee about this, bipartisan conversation. We've got bipartisan sponsors on this, and I would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Councilman Owen?
That was an excellent explanation. The only thing I wanted to add to that is I wanted to call out Codes and Regulations Manager Wesley Barber, who actually, from his position doing his job, reached out to us and said, here's a way to make things more efficient and better. And we really need to encourage people that are working for us to do that. And so I wanted to give props to Wesley for doing that and thank him for helping us be more efficient. Thank you.
Seeing no one else in the queue, this is an ordinance that requires a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please open the voting.
Councilmember Mulvey Woolridge.
Yes.
Councilwoman Chapel, can you vote? Okay. I'm going to say yes. Councilman Bratcher, are you able to vote? Did you vote yes? Sorry. Councilman Bitshon, yours is.
I still have the circle of death here, and yes.
Thank you. Mr. President, you have 25 yes votes.
The ordinance is adopted. A reading of item number 52, please.
An ordinance relating to the zoning of property located at 1300 Belmar Drive containing approximately 0.29 acres and being a Louisville Metro case number 24 zone 0080. Read in full.
The item is brought before us. Councilman Owen, again.
Thank you, President Ackerson. This is located in District 10, and I'll turn it over to Councilwoman Raymond in just a minute to speak to it. Rezone a portion of the existing one-story building between car sales and storage. It's in a neighborhood farm district. The Planning Commission approved this change in zoning and the design development plan 8-0. The ordinance came out of committee 7-0. I'll turn it over to Councilwoman Raymond.
Thank you. Yes, this is already bordered by a golf course and railroad tracks. There's no opposition in the neighborhood to this, and we congratulate the business on their next phase. Thank you.
Councilman Reed, you're in the queue. Seeing no one else in the queue, this is an ordinance that requires a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please open the voting.
Councilmember Mulvey Woolridge.
Yes.
Councilmember Betshon.
Yep.
Councilmember Parker. Councilmember Winkler. Councilmember Bast.
I'm a yes. It's
Thank you.
circling.
I'm sorry. Mr. President, you have 25 yes votes.
The ordinance is adopted. Next on our agenda, item number 53, a reading, please.
An ordinance relating to the zoning of property located at 4603 East Manslick Road and parcel ID numbers 079-100-6200000 and 079-100-6400000, containing approximately 0.56 acres and being in Louisville Metro, case number 24 Zone 0102. Read in full.
Motion.
Items properly before us. Councilman Owen.
Thank you, President Atkinson. This is a fairly straightforward one. The property is located in District 24. Property has been used as a daycare since 2003, and the proposal now is to change the zoning for a real estate office. It came out of Planning Commission unanimously, came out of the committee unanimously. Again, it's in 24. I'll turn it over to Councilwoman Mulvey Woolridge if she has anything she'd like to say.
Councilwoman, you have the floor.
I do not have anything additional. It is right now a good plan, but I don't have anything additional outside of it. Did come out unanimously.
Seeing no one else in the queue, this is an ordinance that requires a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please open the voting.
Councilwoman Mulvey Woolridge.
Yes.
Councilman Betchon.
Yes, please.
Councilwoman Rui.
Yes.
And Councilman Herndon. Oh, thank you, sorry. Mr. President, you have 25 yes votes.
The ordinance is adopted. Madam Clerk, a reading of item 54.
An ordinance relating to the zoning of property located at 1600 Kurtz Way, containing approximately 34.56 acres and being in Louisville Metro, case number 24 Zone 0003. Read in full.
Motion.
The item is brought before us. Councilman Owen again.
Thank you, President Atkinson. This was an ordinance denying a change in zoning from R4 to PRD and R6 at this location. A couple of things I wanted to point out. The proposal called for 16 detached single-family homes, 38 semi-detached townhomes, and 368 multifamily dwellings. And we talked about this in committee, and I think it's important to restate it. The proposal that they made here, the sponsor made here, is exactly what we've been asking sponsors to do, to diversify the housing that they're putting on in their developments. And I wanted to call that out and say, I think people are hearing us when we're saying our constituents want to see some diversification in the housing options, and they've done that here. The problem is that the site itself, a couple of things, the reasons it were denied. They noted that the proposal did not meet the comprehensive plan with respect to development on environmentally sensitive sites. The site contains areas of steep slopes and unstable soils present due to the New Providence Shale formation under the site. The name New Providence Shale was used to describe an 80 to 100 feet of shale at the base of the knobs and immediately above the limestone. Exposures are found in the lowlands and lowest part of the knobs region or knobstone escarpment. So the reason this was denied by the Planning Commission was because of the instability of the site itself and the soil. So this is in Council District 12, so I can turn it over to Councilman Joseph who'd like to speak to it.
Yes, thank you. The Planning and Zoning passed a recommendation to deny the rezoning of this property because it was unsafe to build on this site. What we have is a vacant lot that was formerly a pay lake in southwest Louisville, full of unstable soils and steep slopes. This is a neighborhood that has already been affected by prior efforts to develop that led to drainage problems for surrounding homes, and the number of constituents who spoke out against this development throughout the process is a clear indicator of the damage that this development could have caused potentially. I attended the neighborhood meeting where a full room of residents came to voice their concerns and where the Planning Commission voted 6-3 to deny the rezoning. The Planning and Zoning Committee voted unanimously to uphold the decision of the Planning Commission, and I urge the council to vote yes to uphold the decision.
Seeing no one else in the queue, Councilman Owen.
Thank you. I just wanted, this is always complicated, so this is a denial. So a yes vote upholds the Planning Commission's denial. Thank you.
Seeing no one else in the queue, this is an ordinance that requires a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please open the roll.
Councilwoman Mulvey Woolridge.
Yes.
Councilmember Parker. Mr. President, you have 25 yes votes.
The ordinance is adopted. Madam Clerk, a reading of item number 55.
An ordinance amending sections 119.01, 119.02, 119.03 of the Louisville Metro Code of Ordinances, LMCO, regarding the registration of rental housing units, amendment by substitution, as amended, read in full.
Motion. Sorry.
The item is properly before us. Councilwoman Purvis, this came out of your committee.
Sorry, yes, President, it did. I'm going to yield the floor to Councilman Piagentini, please.
To your co-chair, Councilman Piagentini.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to make some high-level comments that will apply to this in the next piece of legislation, so I don't have to repeat myself, just to get it on the record. And then there is an amended version on the system. The latest amendments that I will read into the record and ask to vote on those amendments are in there, so you can pull them up, but I'll read them in. Most of them cleaning up certain language, but I'll make sure to be detailed in anything that was amended since the committee meeting. So first of all, overall, what do both of these pieces of legislation do? They essentially have us focus, okay? In both circumstances, you had, and again, I will not begrudge or say anything negative about my colleagues, former colleagues at this point, who passed these initial pieces of legislation. They're doing what they believe to be right, and that's the end of the conversation. After looking at this, looking at the impacts it has, as both have been trying to be implemented, I think adjustment is reasonable. In both cases, we still have all of the functionality, I would argue, that we had in the initial legislation. For example, in the rental registry, we will still be able to contact and know who owns what properties. And then I'll speak separately about the lead registry. I want to broadly say I get concerned about some of the language being used when we debate this. Landlords are not the enemy. And even all the data, and I have a ton of it, from public health on the issues, the actual data on how many reports we get per year that are both just regular, just any blood lead level increase, and those that are toxic, the numbers compared to how many properties we have that people live in that were built before 1978 are very tiny, okay? We're looking at about 1% maybe of properties, 2% maybe, that could have an issue. And in many cases, it turns out to be not the residents when they do the inspections. It turns out to be something else, and public health has to fight through those battles. So my focus here is making sure we are balancing many interests, public health interests, public transparency interests, as well as making sure that particularly our small local property owners, people that own 2, 4 properties, that they are not being run out of town due to a mountain of regulations and expenses that are being added to them by government regulation. And that is precisely who was going to be the most affected. I did not talk to BlackRock or any other out-of-state investor in properties. I only spoke to different constituencies, both advocates as well as local small landlords who were going to be the ones the most adversely affected, and many of which were looking to do whole fire sales to get rid of their property and sell to out-of-state investors. I know there's some talk about the pressure from the state legislature. The state legislature got pressure from mutual constituents to do something about the existing law. These are our constituents too. Many of them have concerns. Maybe they felt they didn't have a voice here at Metro Council, but they went to the state legislature instead. First, I think it's more accurate to say that we were pressured by these shared constituents to do something and take a look at this legislation. Second, I can't remember the last time the state contemplated a potential preemption action and then stopped and said, hold on, let's go to the local government, let's go to Louisville and see if they can't work out something that makes sense locally and get that passed instead. I think that shows an incredible shift, as we've seen with this new mayor and his relationship with the General Assembly, on our relationship and bodes well for our future in working with the General Assembly and working with mutual constituents to ensure that we're hearing all voices and reacting locally and hopefully retaining control locally. And that is also very much my goal here. I know that some have argued that the voice of tenants or the broader population is not heard. I reject that wholesale. If that were the case, I wouldn't be fighting for this legislation at all. I would just let 173 pass, and and there would be literally no voice left for anything that advocates, tenants, and others in that community were fighting for. So I'm very much fighting to ensure that we have some local control that ensures that their concerns are dealt with as well. I believe these amendments achieve these overall goals. And now I'm going to go through the rental registry first, and then I'll present my amendment, and then we can vote on that, and then we'll go to the lead registry, so I'll talk about these separately. You can see the amendments that passed out of committee. I won't spend a whole lot of time on those. I think those have been circulated widely. So what I'm going to do is go right into my proposed amendment now. So I'm going to make a motion to amend, and I'm going to read the amendments. First, let me say thank you to the County Attorney's Office, specifically Alice Lyons, on this particular legislation. I'm going to read the amendments into the record. I'll ask for a second. But if I miss anything, I'm going to ask the County Attorney to step in and clarify if I miss something. So first of all, on the bottom of page 2, under letter G, we struck the word "and." We added it to letter H because we added a letter I on exemptions, which arguably the exemption already existed, but we wanted to clarify that housing units occupied by a tenant who does not provide any consideration in exchange for that housing is exempt from the rental registry. What does that mean? That means that people that have their property in a trust for estate planning purposes, that live in their own property that they are the trustee of in that trust, are not registering on the rental property because that property is not in exchange for any consideration with a tenant. The next part of the amendment, we're striking the word "and fees" on the bottom of page 4 under number 3. There's no longer fees in the rental registry, so it doesn't make sense to continue to reference them. On page 5, number 5, letter A, failure to register the rental housing unit shall cause the Department of Codes and Regulations to send notice to the owner, and then we added the following language: as identified by property value administration records of the property for the failure. Fairly typical, but we just added that. I want to thank Councilman Linninger. He brought up something we had, I would argue, accidentally struck in the rental registry. We added it back in, but by advice from the County Attorney's Office, there is a sentence in there that was redundant, and so we took it out for technical reasons, for legal reasons. I can have the County Attorney opine if you have any questions on it. The last sentence of that paragraph we added back in is, whenever a tenant agrees to an inspection of a rental housing unit, the tenant shall benefit from the same presumption under KRS 383-7052. That's already covered in the paragraph, so it didn't make sense. It's like repeating the same thing. And then the last amendment is the last page. Again, we struck language under letter E that says figures for registration fees collected and in the annual reporting, because again, we're not collecting registration fees. It didn't make sense to leave that language in. So I'm going to make that as in the form of a motion.
The motion to amend is before us. There's some folks in the queue, but the question is going to be this: are you speaking to the ordinance as a whole, or are you speaking to the amendment?
I would like to speak to the ordinance as a whole, but I would like to avail Councilman Piagentini on his offer for the county attorney to explain the resized language on
Alice? Councilman Linninger, I tender the floor to you for questions for Alice Lyon.
I would just like the explanation of the language that was struck, added back, and restruck.
So I've got some notes on that. In KRS 383-705 that has the retaliatory conduct piece that's there now. In our ordinance, there was a reference to presumption.
Alice, they can't hear you. If you can speak into the
Sorry.
microphone.
Let me identify myself for the record. Alice Lyon with the Jefferson County Attorney's Office. And the presumption that's named in LMCO is also named in KRS 383-705, but it's defined in KRS as applying to those situations where there's a 1-year gap between the complaint and any potential retaliatory conduct. And the language that's in LMCO could be interpreted as expanding the range of that presumption. And we as a city cannot amend the UROLTA protections that are in KRS. We can't expand them and we can't contract them. So since I thought that language could possibly imply that there was more to the presumption, that's why we struck that again after committee.
Thank you.
Any further questions on the amendment?
I'm sorry, we forgot a portion of the amendment. I forgot one. Okay, sorry. Just want to add to, it's already in the record, it's already there. I forgot to read this portion of it. Under Section 4, letter D, I'm just going to read the whole section, but I'll tell you what was amended. The name, mailing, and physical addresses, telephone number, and email address of the responsible managing operator. That's part of that's under the section under publicly available information. If the responsible managing operator is also the owner and the owner is not a corporation, partnership, or trust, the physical address, and this is what we added, and telephone number, that's the amendment, okay, of the owner shall be excluded from the publicly available online renter registry. Sorry, just those 3 words. My dad. Thank you.
You made a motion, a second to, so it's before us. Any questions about this? Councilman Kramer.
About the amendment in general, yes?
Yes.
And it's just a clarification. I just want to be certain. In your description, you mentioned that since there isn't a registry, that there's no fee, right? So you took the language out about the fee. But the original, I mean, each apartment owner still has to register originally, right? And the fee for the original registration is still in place. Or did we do away with the fee for the original registration as well? So I'm asking you as a question.
Yeah, we did away with fees.
Even for the original registration?
Well, all the current registrations are going to roll over.
They are. And,
Yes.
and there should be no additional fee for them. I get it, and I'm full on board, right? But there are apartments that either will be built, or there are some apartment owners currently who, for whatever reason, haven't followed the law, which we all are in agreement they should have. I didn't think we were intent on waiving the fee for those original registrants.
Yeah, we're not, let's put it this way, we have no cost. Just because you build an apartment complex in the city, we're not adding costs by making you, it's a website. Like, it really is fairly simple to register. There really is no cost. With that said, all the enforcement still stays in place. Yeah.
Right.
Councilman Purvis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilman Piaggiatini, I'm looking at one of the ordinances, the signs held up by one of our audience this evening, and they're concerned about the rush. Is it possible for you to explain the time frame?
Yes, thank you for the question. So the state submitted House Bill 173. That was what I was talking about mutual constituents that went to some General Assembly members to move legislation that would ban all registries, which would impact 3 registries, actually, a rental registry, the lead registry, as well as the short-term rental registry. It would eliminate all 3. And then, so I went to the General Assembly as well as others to say, look, can we talk and see if there's some local solutions, and we understand the concerns. House Bill 173 is up for committee next Tuesday morning. It's been filed to be heard in the House. My hope is that by getting these passed in this time frame, that will send the signal that we address some of the biggest concerns, right, that were in the original registries, and then they will hopefully not move forward with that piece of legislation, so that we can retain this local control.
Can you also explain if House Bill 173 is passed out of committee, what does that mean?
Yeah, so if it passes out of the House committee, it'll go to the House floor, it'll get a vote. And then it still has to go to the Senate, and the Senate has to vote on it after that. But
So can you talk about the consequences if it passes?
yeah, if it passes, all three registries that I mentioned, the rental registry, lead registry, and short-term rental registry would be illegal. They would not be in compliance with state law. And the way it's written, we wouldn't be able to resurrect it. Like, it's not as though it gets rid of them and we have to do something new. It would ban in perpetuity any registries related to rental property. So, again, we're trying to, part of the goal here is to, of course, retain local control and get in front of that, so that does not happen.
And what does that say about landlord accountability?
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
Can you please briefly explain what does that do for landlord accountability?
Let's deal with the amendment, though. We're going to come back to that question, okay? Because right now, the question for us is the amendment. Any other questions about the amendment? Councilman Winkler.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if somebody ahead of me had questions about the amendment.
If somebody has questions about the amendment.
No, my questions is about the general.
I understand. We're going to hold off on that until we deal with the amendment.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd
Councilman
like to go
Winkler?
back to the point that Councilman Kramer made about eliminating the fee for people's sort of their, I won't call it the original registrants because we'll sort of mix terms here, but the first time I register, I know Councilman Piagentini, you made the point that, it's really just registering on the website. There's not really any cost associated with that. But I think the purpose of the fee, and we do this with lots of ordinances, is that's what partially goes and then funds the subsequent administration and inspection. And so I'm curious, one, why we would eliminate the sort of the origination fee, if you will, and two, how that's equitable for people that did register originally and follow the law, and then now we're changing it. And so, I understand not charging every single year. That I could probably support, but I don't quite understand why we would eliminate sort of the initial altogether. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. What I would say is, when you say it helps pay for compliance, right? We have to philosophically agree on what the purpose of these agencies are, okay? We've built a registry that will help, and this registry will help codes and regs be more efficient in how they go about enforcing, because they'll be more easily able to identify who the owners of properties are, who the managing directors are, and be able to get a hold of them quickly, as opposed to going through a huge rigmarole with, Secretary of State investigations and all these things to try to figure out who owns things. But if the purpose of the rental registry is to be some kind of revenue center, right, I think that's an issue, right? We already have this registry built, okay? It's just going to be pared down a little bit. The website exists, the registry exists. So there's not like an ongoing cost of maintaining this website of any significance. And then codes and regs is something we built into the fees that we built into this current, or at least the existing registry that we're amending, were designed because it included, it was essentially building a revenue stream to do some of the random inspections, right? That's what it was there for. Again, are all landlords the enemies, or are just the ones that are breaking the law, which we find them when they're screwing up, and revenue is the cost of enforcing is recouped through finding those people that are violating the law. The people that are registering are the people trying to comply with the law. And I'm not trying to make it any more costly for housing to be built, for landlords to be compliant. And again, disproportionately, the people that balk at these costs are the local 1 and 2 home owners. It is not, the massive corporations that are out of state that have 14 different companies that run them. So, if we're going to talk equity, that's what the issue is. But again, I'm open to more discussion on that, but that's the philosophical issue.
Councilman Hudson, you're next in the queue for the amendment.
It is for the amendment. Mr. President, thank you for recognizing me, and I appreciate my colleagues' clarification on paragraph 4D. What I would like to add with the sponsor's permission is where it includes the exclusions of physical address and phone number, also add email address as an exclusion. So I don't know if I need to make that in the form of an amendment or if it can just be added to the current amendment. So it would read, partnership or trust, the physical address and phone number and email address of the owner shall be excluded. If not, we can pass as is or not, and then address at a future date.
He's requested that it be added as a friendly amendment, I believe.
So, again, glad to discuss it more here. I would argue the issue that came up, particularly with small local landlords who are not corporations and all this stuff, emails, you can make up an email for free kind of anywhere. You can't really like dox somebody with their email, but their phone number, they don't have business phone numbers, and their address was their home address. So people were literally showing up at their front door. So that there wasn't, let me just put it this way, I didn't have it expressed to me that sharing an email address was a particular issue. So again, I'm not against it. I'm glad for the rest of my colleagues to weigh in on that, but I'm just saying it wasn't expressed as a particular issue like the address and phone number was.
So what we've got now is we've got an amendment before us. If
No,
this
we
we have an amendment before us. If that passes, you can then move to amend it further. Any other discussion on the amendment that's presently before us? Councilman Owen.
I just wanted to clarify again. So we have, anybody who has registered already has paid a fee, and anybody who was dragging their feet to register perhaps has not paid a fee and will not have to pay a fee going forward, which seems entirely unfair to me. And I think we could potentially, if we continue to have fees come in, expand testing and do some other things that might be beneficial going forward. So I just think, I didn't really, to be perfectly honest, I didn't understand the language, and when our colleague asked me the question that he asked you, I didn't know the answer. So I was about the fees and the way those were structured. So I would prefer to be more equitable and continue to require fees, because it just seems so unfair to me that we required people to pay fees and the people that drug their feet don't have to.
Councilman Pichety.
If I may respond, thank you, Mr. President. Maybe that's I'll argue your only compelling argument, but again, you then started to veer into the lane of, we can use these fees for other purposes. Now we're creating it as a revenue center to do other things. And again, what we want is people to register, okay? We want them to do that. Costs are a barrier to registry, okay? What the registration will do is truly differentiate between those that are bothering to follow the law and those that are not. Our issue is with people that don't register. So even if we put fees on right now and, let's say 100 new landlords, register and they pay the fee, who's not paying the fee is the people that aren't registering, right? We want to make it as easy as possible for landlords to register. We want them to register. We want them to go through this process. And so, again, if the council thinks differently, that's fine, and we can vote on that amendment. But I would argue all we're doing is either treating these things as revenue centers or putting up barriers to people getting online, registering, which is what we want them to do. There is a mountain of regulation that we put on landlords. Landlords offer a tremendous service to our community. They provide the housing that we all desperately want more of, right? The government sort of stinks at it, and so we want more private landlords to do it. And I think continuing to increase costs and increase difficulties for them to comply with the law, particularly the ones that are complying, is not the way we should go.
Councilman Bellinger.
So as a follow-up, what Councilman Owen has pointed out about, that we're rewarding scofflaws and, your arguments against in terms of, whether this is meant to be a revenue stream, is any of that germane to the threat from Frankfurt? Or is that a requirement of the deal that you've struck that we eliminate these fees, or is that something that's up to us?
Thank you, Mr. President. So when you say deal struck, there's no deal struck, right? This is me doing my best to balance competing interests and get something that accomplishes the goal and also, balances, different voices from across the community. Again, if 14 members of this council think we need to reinstate the fees, feel free to amend it and reinstate the fees. I'm not going to support that, and I've explained philosophically why I wouldn't support it. But, I don't want anybody to think that there's, if you do this, we will do that, right? Like, this is me trying to put forth the best piece of legislation that I think makes sense given all the competing interests, and that will also stop any movement forward on this potential preemption bill pending in the State General Assembly. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilman Reed on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. So with regard to the fees, was there a stated purpose for the fees in the beginning, like fixed costs that had to be covered, and was that fixed cost covered, such as the design of a website?
I will assume the president is motioning to me to
Yes,
respond.
I'm asking you the question.
Thank you. I can't speak to the original rental registry that goes back to, I think it was 2017 or maybe earlier. I cannot remember I cannot comment on what the purpose of that was. What the purpose of this fee structure was, the updated one that was passed maybe a year or two ago had added much more complexity, including all of the random inspections and all of this, which was going to increase costs significantly. So they had, in that case, not only did they have the fees in there, but they had annual re-registry. So every year, every landlord had to incur this cost. So that bill was using it as a revenue stream to offset costs. But the costs it was looking to offset have been largely eliminated as well, right?
So in other
I can't
words,
speak to the original one, but the website and the registry is built. It doesn't cost a ton of money to update it.
so in other words, it was being used as a revenue stream, but those costs have been offset by other revenue streams.
No, the random inspections are out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are no more costs for the.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions on the amendment? Seeing none. This is an amendment that requires a voice vote. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition?
No.
The ayes have it. All right. The amended version is properly before us. We're going to begin discussion on that. Councilman Leninger, you are first in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I hope everyone's excited for what they're actually here for. I represent a district that is where a majority of my residents are renters. The removal of inspections in high-density rental areas affects my entire district. We already struggle here in the city of Louisville with holding landlords, especially out-of-state landlords, accountable to the city and to their tenants. This ordinance proposes to weaken an important tool of accountability. Besides removing all fees associated with properties with the rental registry and rewarding scofflaws, this ordinance removes the signed affidavit required of landlords to state that their properties are safe and up to code. Again, this is a matter of less accountability, less responsibility for people who own multiple forms of property in our city. Tenants are, by definition and by the unfortunate laws of our state, on the wrong side of an entirely unequal relationship to their landlords. This proposal before us today furthers that imbalance when we should be working to correct it. I was elected to serve the needs of the working class in this city. This does not do that. I cannot in good conscience support it.
Next in the queue is Councilwoman Parrish Wright.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm concerned because a great deal of our electeds, both at the state level and local level, own property, are landlords, and that's their business. That's the American dream.
but the majority of our state of Kentucky and our city rent, including people who are working for Metro government, people who are elected, and I don't hear the tenants or the renters' voice in any of these amendments. Furthermore, it's the cost of business. As an elected official, my number, my address, I've gotten racist threats. I've had to hire security for all the threats that I've gotten for standing up for social justice. But that, when you put yourself out there in business and in a public way, people are going to address you and try to contact you. We are trying to legislate based on less than 1% of our state to change things that can impact families, impact renters, working class, poor people, and people who are trying to obtain housing. That is the cost of business. And this powerful legislation was so important. This feels very rushed. I really would like us to table this and really get to the nit and gritty of it, because we have time. We don't have to rush this. As someone who's had to be in Frankfurt lobbying, they're rushing this and they're trying to make us make the first move. This feels like a bully move. No deals were made with me or anybody that I know. So and the Republicans are not at a majority here. And so we need to do what's best for the Louisvillians that have entrusted us to make those decisions. Tenants' voices are lost in this. We should not be bullied by Frankfurt. This overreach is disrespectful. And we have too many people who have shown up and who are reaching out to us to do what's right by them. We know that they worked at state with one Republican here, but they did not contact all of us, and we got to do what's right by the people. Unlike my colleague, I don't work for Frankfurt's overreach, and I am a solid no because of my district, District 3, half of my constituents are renters and half of them are homeowners, and we need to protect all of Louisville because this constant overreach will send us down a terrible path we will not be able to recover from. Louisville Metro government employees and Louisville Metro people deserve us to make the decisions that are best for them. Just like these signs say, don't trade a child's life for money, don't take away from us a registry that benefits the renters who live in our city. So I am a no for that reason. Thank you.
Councilman Reed, you're next in the queue. Withdraw. Councilman Kramer, you're next in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. President. I spoke to the amendment.
Councilwoman
I withdraw.
Purvis, you were next in the queue.
I'm sorry, I'm good.
You're good? Okay. Councilman Rui, Councilwoman Rui, you're next in the queue.
Thank you very much. So first of all, I will be voting no on this. And as Councilman Linenger noted, a big part of it is that paragraph struck out asking the landlords to swear to basically the habitability of their property. I cannot imagine why they wouldn't want to do that. But I guess it all falls on the poor tenant when there's not enough housing out there to accept whatever is there. The rules were put in place to make housing safe for people to live in. Our whole discussion here is about whose interests take primacy right now. And it seems like based on what we're talking about here, it's the landlords. And they're interested in making money over the people whose voices are the least heard, who need safe and secure housing. So I will be voting no on this. Thank you.
Councilman Winkler.
Thank you, Mr. President. And first of all, let me just say, I do agree with Councilman Piagentini's comments that, vilifying business owners, vilifying landlords is probably not there certainly are some bad actors and slumlords, and they are a problem, but in general, I think many are small business owners, and so I don't think vilifying them is proper. I do want to make a motion, though, because I do think beyond, and I don't think it's a revenue center, but I do think there is administrative actions required around maintaining the rental registry. I think it is standard for government to have a fee structure set up with anytime that you're asking or you have some sort of compliance component, there is a fee structure typically associated with it. So on page 7, section D, I would make a motion to restore sort of this first section, an non-refundable fee shall accompany the initial registration form. The fee structure is $25 through that fee structure. It would retain the first sentence, the director shall provide means of accepting payment online concurrent with the submission of the annual registration form. Then the remainder would be struck, right, the afterpay, because there is no ongoing registration fee. So you'd keep sort of all that next section struck all the way until the last sentence, which is rental housing units registered at the time of this chapter takes effect shall not be required to re-register so long as they do not have outstanding violations through the rest. So that would be my motion.
Is there a second? Second. The motion is properly before us. Councilman Owen, you're next in the queue, but are you speaking to the ordinance as a whole or to this amendment? Okay, any discussion on this amendment? Councilman Kramer.
Thank you. I just want to be positive of the language because it sounded like it still included something about annual. And I know you said after it says annual, but still, I just want to be positive that if we put a fee on, and for the record, Councilman Piagentini and I agree on philosophically on this. I don't believe that we should use fees and license fees and things like that to generate revenue. I'm completely and adamantly opposed to that. I'm pretty well on record for being opposed to that. You can go back over the length of my tenure here. At the same time, I would point out that the reason that fees exist when we require a registration is because there is some expense to enforcing or managing that registration. Our goal here is to make sure that folks, in fact, register, right? And to Councilman Owen's point, if we don't have a fee in place, we basically said we're going to reward you for breaking the law. The law said you had to register. You chose to not, and now we're going to do away with the fee. What the fee is supposed to do, not generate revenue. I want to say that as plainly as I can. This fee is not to generate revenue. This fee is to make sure that we have the resources necessary to go after the people who did not register. That's what the fee's for. It gives us the resources to go after the people who are breaking the law, right? So it simply says, follow the law. There's a fee to make sure that you're doing that, and there's a fee going forward to make sure that now that you've done what you're supposed to do, every other person who's supposed to do the same thing is now going to do what they're supposed to do. This is not an annual thing. It's not a revenue generator. It doesn't go on and on and on ad infinitum. It simply says we have this registry. We're serious about it. We want to make sure that you follow the law, and we've put in a small fee, and it's a small fee. We're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars here. We're talking about a small fee that makes it possible for us to make sure that people are actually registering. That's it. And in that regard, I'm not opposed to this. Actually, I kind of feel like if we're gonna create a new piece of government, which this registry did in 2017, whatever we created, we have to pay for. And if we're going to use this registry going forward, we have to pay for it. And the way to pay for it is when you register once you pay a fee. And if that's, as long as the county attorney is certain that's exactly what our language says, and I'm not challenging, I just want to make sure, I'm fine with that.
Alice?
Agreed that if D came back in, the two sentences that would need to still be removed are the ones that begin with after payment of initial registration and annual registration shall, and then the sentence right after that that begins with for those with no violations. Those would be the only two that would still need to come out to capture your intent.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on Councilman Winkler's amendment? Hearing none, this is an amendment that requires a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any in opposition?
No.
The ayes have it. We do have the new amended version before us now, and I believe, Councilman Owen, you are next in the queue. Withdraw? All right, we have the final amended version before us. Any other discussion on this ordinance? Councilman Benson.
Just to make sure, now we're voting that what we're going to pass, that there's a fee for everybody who has rental property. Is that right?
that what you said?
There's an initial registration fee,
Initial
a
registration?
one-time registration fee.
Okay, but everybody who has rental property pays that, right?
Some have already paid it.
Some's already paid it, but now everybody pays it.
Everyone will be required that has not paid it or has a new property will be required to pay the one-time initiation fee. No annual fees, just a one-time. So if you own rental property, you've already paid your initial fee, you would not have to pay anymore.
Like I've once told somebody, you know, I couldn't vote on it before because I have rental property. And one of the things that I said it's the easiest thing to do is vote on something that don't affect you. And so it's easy. Why don't we just vote and have everybody in the county pay something so we have more money? We could have more money if ever we just get everybody to pay more. That's what you think, don't you?
Anything else, Councilman Vincent?
No. Thanks.
Anyone else on the final amended version of this ordinance? Seeing none, this ordinance requires a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, open the roll.
Councilmember Mulvey Woolridge?
Yes.
I'm ready. Mr. President, you have 21 yes votes and 4 no votes.
The ordinance is adopted. Madam Clerk, a reading of item number 56, please.
An ordinance amending Chapter 146 of the Louisville Metro Code of Ordinances regarding the lead-based hazards and repealing LMCO Chapter 167, amendment by substitution, read in full.
Second.
Councilwoman Purvis, this also came out of your committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I'm going to yield this to Councilman Piaggiatini.
The co-chair of the committee, Councilman Piaggiatini.
Thank you very much. So, again, just one comment briefly on this, and then I'm going to dive, again, right into the amendments that have been proposed. And I'll explain the amendments as I go through, but I'm going to make it as one motion on all the amendments. And again, want to thank Robbie from the County Attorney's Office, who has been doing yeoman's work on making sure all of this is accounted for properly. All I want to say as a general comment is that we have an execution problem in how we attack this issue right now. I have many emails with the administration, with the respective departments that are supposed to be regulating this right now, and I would tell you that what we're doing right now within the current law is at best substandard. And I think if I'm going to interpret, again, because I respect my colleagues, all my former colleagues, in their intentions behind passing certain legislation, that they were frustrated by the lack of movement. And I can tell you that what this legislation does, it keeps in place more tools than we have today. It keeps in place, including proactive tools to attack lead in residential areas, in rental properties. And if executed properly, along with what the water company is doing, and for those that don't know, the water company starting this year is working on a comprehensive program to eliminate lead from water pipes going to places that children tend to reside, daycares, childcare, rental housing units, schools, this type of thing. We execute this properly, and plus what they're doing, we are going to see significant movement. This is going to be an execution thing, and both public health and codes and regs have every tool they need to be successful in this amended legislation. With that said, I will make a motion to amend the following areas. Bear with me as I try to explain a few of these things. On page 2 in definitions, there's a definition of director. The director of Louisville, Jefferson County Metro Department of Codes and Regulations. Pretty straightforward. On page 4, we amended the definition of secondary residence to better align with state law, which actually improves the ability to count more things as secondary residence. The existing language talked about where a person spends minor's primary residence where they spend at least 20% of their time. Now it will read secondary residence, a home other than the minor's primary residence We're scratching where he or she spends at least 20% of the time, and we're adding in which a child 6 years of age or under spends at least 3 hours a day, 2 days a week. So 6 total hours a week, and that can be considered a secondary residence. So actually, it expands our definition of secondary residence and aligns with the state. Under inspections on section 156.302B, we changed the word shall to may. We did add a section under letter D of that same section related to inspections. Quote, approval by director before any order by a Louisville Metro Code Enforcement Officer for a lead hazard risk assessment based upon a reasonable suspicion of a lead-based hazard following an inspection. The director must first review and approve of such order prior to its issuance. What does that mean? One of the proactive tools that are in here is if a code and regs officer is doing an inspection of anything, if they're just in a property that was built before 1978, and by the way, I don't know if you caught this, but in the rental registry, I added that property owners must add the date of which their property was created, or was built, so that code enforcement officer has an efficient way of identifying these properties. If they're in there and they see evidence, and there are ways to do this, many of our code officers are going through this training right now, and they see evidence of the issue, they have the authority, right? They have to have evidence to order a lead hazard risk assessment. A lead hazard risk assessment costs the property owner hundreds of dollars, and not like 150. It's somewhere between $500 and $800 each time this is ordered, and that's before we have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that there is lead in the property. It's just the suspicion. So in order to ensure that we're not incurring these costs for landlords, with ensuring that we've got somebody with oversight, ensuring that we don't have a rogue officer just ordering these every single minute of every single day, the director will sign off on them. So our codes and regs officers can order them. That will that lead hazard risk assessment is what proves if the lead is on the property or not. That cost is borne by the landlord, and to ensure that it is not abused, we're making sure the director signs off on those orders. Under lead-based hazard response by owner, under notice, we changed 14 to 30 days of the issuance of the order. The owner of the property shall be responsible for obtaining the lead hazard risk assessment within 30 days instead of 14. We added no owner shall be required to have a lead hazard risk assessment more than once in a 3-year period unless there is demonstrable immediate danger of lead exposure. Again, just a reasonable protection to say we've already made them spend hundreds of dollars, no lead was found, we're not going to make them do it repeatedly every 5 moments unless there is, quote, a demonstrable immediate danger of lead exposure. The date for completion of the, based on the lead hazard risk assessment, this is bottom of page 5, shall establish a remediation plan which specifies what lead hazard controls are necessary. So once you do the inspection, you have that. The date for completion, and this is what we added, shall not exceed 90 days instead of 60 days. Again, it's hard to get these contractors. And then we added from the date of the introduction of the remediation plan unless for good cause shown. At the bottom of page 6, under reinspection, so there's 2 types of remediation. There's interim remediation, there's permanent remediation. If a landlord does permanent remediation, that means they removed all lead from the property. If they do that, re-inspections are not required because they removed all the lead from the property. If they use intermediate steps, that's like painting over the lead or other measures that encapsulate it, they can have a re-inspection after 3 years to ensure that that was properly done. So we say, so we just amended the language to say after 3 years they'll have a re-inspection. Again, we clarified, we added language at the top of page 7. Re-inspections will not be required when lead hazard abatement has been utilized for all lead-based hazards. In other words, they've permanently removed it. There's no need for a re-inspection. And then finally, we clarified the language in the penalties. We added the language, all fines shall be doubled for violations involving an EBLL, that's an elevated blood lead level, up to a maximum of $4,000 per citation. I want to be clear about the citation section. Citations are for non-compliance with the law. So if property owners, either through a codes and regs inspector or through other means, like right now, for example, public health can only take mandate action if the EBLL level is toxic. This allows them to mandate action after proving that lead is in the property, even with any elevated blood lead level, okay? They still have to prove it's on the property, and then once they've proven it, they can then remediate. If the property owner is acting in good faith and meeting all the requirements of the law to remediate, they are not cited. They are only cited if they gaff off any portion of the compliance of the law. But we clarified that they can get up to $4,000 per citation in fines, and actually the fines are quite aggressive in here. So that's all of that, and I'll make a motion to amend.
Is there a second? All right, we've got an amendment before us. I've got folks in the queue, but let's do this. The question is anyone in the queue speaking to the amendment? Anyone to the amendment? All right, we've got an amendment before us, it's been properly seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing no opposition, that amendment passes. Now we have the amendment ordinance before us. And first in the queue is Councilwoman Chapel.
Thank you so very much. We just heard 15 minutes going over amendments that were made to this. Obviously, it's not fully cooked, and these are a lot of amendments to consider. I also see no rush in voting for this tonight, so I would make the motion that we table this because we're in session all year long, folks. Let's talk about this a little bit more.
Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
All right, motion table is not debatable. So all those in favor of table and say aye.
Aye.
All those in opposition?
No.
No.
In the opinion of the chairs, the noes have it.
I'd like to call for division of the House.
Want a roll call vote?
Yes.
Madam Clerk, a roll call vote.
Councilmember Mulvey Woolridge.
Just so
This
we're clear
is
here, folks,
for-
a yes is to
Okay.
table, a no is to not table.
No.
I think I'm ready, Cheryl. Mr. President, you have 7 to table and 18 not to table.
The motion fails. Next to speak is Councilman Leninger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I represent a majority renter district with the oldest homes in the city, particularly in Old Louisville, Park Hill, and Algonquin, areas with acute risk for lead poisoning for children. My wife is a second-year medical student at the University of Louisville School of Medicine, and she's there because she's been called to serve as a pediatric specialist for the most at-risk and disadvantaged children in our state. In Louisville, that means children in the West End. Children in the West End and Old Louisville are astronomically more likely to be impacted by lead poisoning. The damage caused by lead in children is devastating and irreversible. It impacts every aspect of their lives, how they perform in school, how they relate to their peers and their teachers. Children with lead poisoning are much, much more likely to make poor life decisions and much more likely to become adults who are arrested and incarcerated. They're more likely to be violent with their loved ones and others, and they're more likely to be victims of violence. Lead poisoning steals futures from these children and harms the entire community, harms us forever. The Republican caucus in Frankfort knows all of this. In committee, Councilman Piagentini pointed out that this was the first time that there's been a preemption fight between our body and the state legislature, where the majority in Frankfort reached out to pause the effort. He repeated that tonight. I will repeat what I said in committee. It is no coincidence that Republicans in Frankfort are eager for us to take this off their plate, that they would rather we weaken our lead abatement ordinance ourselves rather than having hearings in Frankfort, passing a bill, and being forced to answer questions about being the party of lead poisoning children. I can understand that. We should have the same misgivings. I urge my colleagues to consider the harm that making our lead abatement reactive rather than proactive, which I maintain this does, will cause. I urge my colleagues to consider whether we can trust Frankfort to leave the city alone after this vote. For example, there was a new preemption filed today for conversion therapy, abusive conversion therapy. I don't trust Frankfort, a Frankfort that would vote for conversion therapy to leave our city alone. I urge my colleagues to consider where we are being played by leadership in Frankfurt who do not want their bill to advance with their fingerprints all over it, but still want to deliver a win to their donors at the expense of children, disproportionately at the expense of poor black children in the West End, some of whom I represent, some of whom others here represent, but all of us have a responsibility to protect. I urge my colleagues to think about the fact that the legislation targets the entire state, not just Louisville, and is unpopular across the state, opposed by the Kentucky League of Cities. I urge my colleagues to consider that the fight matters, and if we ever want to change the dynamic between this city and the majority caucus in Frankfurt, the only path forward is to not comply in advance. I urge my colleagues to join me in voting no to this ordinance, which is both bad policy and bad politics. Thank you.
Councilwoman Purvis, you're next in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to explain why I support this legislation. I support this legislation because I am black, and I am from the West End, and I still live in the West End. No one would know that better than anyone that is black and lives in the West End. I can speak for those people. I can't speak for what someone else's vision is. I support this legislation because I represent 30,000 people, and the majority of those people are low-income people who do live in houses that were built before 1978. I support this legislation because without this, we have absolutely nothing. I am not going to play around with the lives of my constituents, the lives of children, and I also resent the fact of being told that black residents are violent because of lead poisoning. I really am just upset about the comment that my colleague just made. I don't think it was fair, and the last time I checked, my colleague that made the comment is not black and is not a professional like his wife is to be. Thank you.
Next in the queue is Councilwoman Parrish Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I first want to ask my colleague, Mr. Piagentini, to consider that the CDC, if you look that up, says any level of lead in blood of a child is toxic. So anybody that is a parent that is trying to make a decision on the vast majority of our city who is exposed to this, it's not just kids in the West End, it's kids who live near airports, it's in soil, it's kids who live places where the planes frequently fly over. And so also in Cleveland, Ohio, research shows that some neighborhoods where more than 1/2 of the kids were dealing with lead poisoning. If we did the same testing here, we would probably find the same. We had people come here that are experts that have done research and who have said that this is a problem. We have people with direct lived experience, and I know that don't really matter to some of you because maybe your families won't be exposed to it, but it matters to the mass majority of people here in Louisville. And I am a black woman and a black mother who birthed 3 kids in the West End, and I will never speak for all black people because you obviously can tell we're different. But what I can tell you is that I would never sit here and claim to represent a district that has been overlooked, that has not been invested in, that people are living in squalor, that more than 60% of the people, 60% of the home ownership in these poor black and brown neighborhoods and affluent neighborhoods are owned by people who do not live in that neighborhood, and many do not live in our city and do not live in our state. This piece of legislation needs to be strengthened and not weakened. Because when you strengthen it, then you ensure for generations after you. You're planting seeds that you may never sit under the shade of. But it's important as decision makers that we do what's best for the majority, the greater good. I don't do things to just say, oh, this is just for Democrats or this is just for black kids. I care about all kids. And when we make decisions here, it impacts all kids. That people, these issues of lead poisoning, it don't look for just Republican kids or Democrat kids. It affects everyone. And people have this in their system. And unfortunately, I do have a brother who has some of the highest lead levels in the state. And he was violent. And he did go to prison. And he does have mental health issues as a result. That's a reality that is happening, that is seen. And we got to deal with the truth that we've done this, and it's been, everything that we've done has been progressive. It's being rolled back little by little by people who want us to be the bad guy. I refuse to be the bad guy for Frankfort. And if I have to do 21-4 again, I'm excited to be there to represent the people because that's why they elected me. I think that if you're more concerned with what these property owners are dealing with, and I own other property, but I want to do what's right. We have property owners who have told us, hey, I did the right thing. I'm still making money. I didn't lose money. That's the cost of business. And if any of you understand business like you always say you do, then you understand that this lead part of this, because of the health and the humanity of people is more important, is the cost of business. And when your tenants and when the people that you're serving see that you care, they take care of your property. They respect you. They understand that you care about them. Because most landlords want tenants to be in their properties more than 2 years so they can see a profit. And if you're saying in part of these amendments, we can test again in 3 years, if any level has been found, I don't want to wait 3 more years. 3 more years could cause even more damage because kids are exposed. You don't listen to the experts. You don't listen to the data. You don't listen to people with direct lived experience. You're listening to the pockets of people who will never experience this. And that is a damn shame. Thank you.
All right, next in the queue is Councilwoman Raymond.
Thank you. I want to name that we've not had long to look at this piece of legislation, right? Especially if you weren't on the committee and we've amended it tonight. If you gave all 26 of us a test on what's in here and what's not, 25 of us would probably fail it. The policy here, I think, is difficult to parse anyway, you know, with lead levels per million in a kid's blood. But the shorthand is that the current ordinance, which just went into effect a couple of months ago after years after it was passed, is more proactive. This one is more reactive, meaning we act after a kid is irreparably harmed, or it relies on our code enforcement officers to be proactive. It's better than nothing, everybody agrees. If this was the very first lead abatement proposal that ever came before council, it would probably pass unanimously. But we already have one, and it should be allowed to work to protect children. We are moving too fast on this, and maybe we're moving at all because we are scared of a bill that was filed in Frankfort. If we don't want Frankfort to run us, then we cannot allow them to run us. The lead abatement ordinance passed by this Metro Council unanimously in 2022 made me proud to be a resident and is one of the main reasons that I ran to join this body. We cannot voluntarily weaken our standards. We are putting the General Assembly in charge after only threats and bluster. Most people in Frankfort will never know or love someone in rental housing in Louisville. I served in the General Assembly for the past 6 years. I know very well how some members of the Republican supermajority try to intimidate and bully pretty much everybody. They're testing you, they're testing us, and if we fold now, they will walk all over us. If we push back, maybe they still walk all over us, or maybe they back off. I'm not scared of House Bill 173. I'm not scared of its primary sponsor. I am scared of more poor kids getting poisoned. I cannot go across this city advocating for early childhood education and then voting to loosen lead testing standards. I can't say pre-K for all and then not also say guaranteed safe housing for all from the start. Does the General Assembly pass harmful legislation? Yes. But they only do a teeny tiny portion of what they threaten to do. House Bill 173 has 5 co-sponsors, none from Louisville, none in leadership. It has not moved an inch. We're going to pass this ordinance and kneecap ourselves when this boogeyman bill has not had a hearing or a reading in either chamber in Frankfurt. If we're playing a game of legislative chicken, we rolled over dead before the gun went off. Today is day 19 of the 30-day legislative session. Let them show us that they have the votes to move this. After tonight, they've still got 2 weeks to move it and spook us, and then we can capitulate in 2 weeks when we're back right here on March 13th. Say we don't act tonight. Say we don't act on March 13th. We stand up for our autonomy and our values. Those big talkers down I-64 still have March 14th to pass a bill through their veto-proof majority with time to override Governor Beshear's veto. I counted 9 Republican members of the House Local Government Committee who have children at home. They're going to vote for the lead poisoning bill. Set this precedent, and we will be able to trace future action back to this moment. They will be emboldened to preempt something that you care about next year, that you care about, and that you care about, and that you care about. Because they know that Louisville Metro Council won't stand up and won't push back. If there's going to be blood on someone's hands, why would we say, no, don't you get dirty, I'll do it? Make them move it, if they can. We got to start looking out for each other. I got free lead testers here for everybody after the meeting. Take them with you and start spraying.
Thank you, President Ackerson, and that's a very difficult act to follow. So maybe you should call on a couple other people first and then put me back in. So, no, what I'll say is, look, I'll start with sort of a story of my life, right? When I tell my children that, you can do this if you want to, but I really wouldn't do it if I were you, I'm not giving them a choice, right? And I'm not being a partner. What I'm doing is I'm manipulating them, okay? And that's exactly what's happening here. We're not being given a choice as a partner. We're being manipulated. And I think we should be very clear that that's what's occurring. I think sometimes when we consider difficult issues, it helps to think of an analogy, right? And so let's think not about lead poisoning. Let's say we've got a problem with kids getting hurt in bus crashes, okay? Because we have brakes fail on buses. Well, what would we do? What would a responsible person do? Well, we'd pass legislation that says before you let kids get on a bus, you need to inspect the bus, right? And you got to make sure that the bus is safe. And we'd probably proactively inspect buses as well, right? We wouldn't just let them go on the road without any inspection and say, well, take your life into your own hands, good luck, okay? What we're being asked to support here is changing that law and saying, go get on the bus, okay? And you know what? If your brakes fail and somebody gets hurt, then we'll go take some action and we'll look at that bus and see if it really should have been on the road or not, okay? Are we going to take action that puts kids on unsafe buses? I don't think we should do that, okay? Would anybody be okay with making that change? Of course they wouldn't. And if Representative Dodson, Callaway, Lewis, Roberts, and White, along with the rest of the Republican members of the Frankfurt legislature, want to be the party of school buses without brakes, let them, okay? But I don't want to be part of that. Councilman Linenger said this, and I think he's absolutely right. Like, what is the best way to pass legislation that's terrible? Get somebody else to do it for you, okay? And that is precisely what's happening here. We are being asked to pass legislation for somebody else. I don't think we should do it. I came in here really thinking that I was a yes vote. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I really came in here today I'm going to vote, hold my nose and vote yes. But I have been convinced by the arguments that have been made this evening that this is a bad step for Louisville. It is a bad precedent. And it's not even just about lead. It is about what authority we have locally to govern the decisions that we make here. And I would encourage all 25 of us, because we're missing one, all 25 of us to vote no to this. I think, Councilman Piagentini, this is the last thing that I'll say. I think you started off exactly right? I totally agree that there are opportunities to make corrections in the existing lead ordinance. I mean, I do think we have an execution problem, and I think we should work on those things. But that's going to take more than 5 minutes here on the floor getting amendments at the tonight, and we should work through those, try to make it strong, make it better for everybody involved. I'm happy to work with you on that, but I do not support giving up local control on this issue and doing the dirty work for somebody else. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, first before I speak, I believe it is statutorily required that we sit by district order on council nights. Is that not the law?
You want to ask the county attorney? County, Alice, he's got a statutory question about, I think he's upset that Councilman Purvis has moved away from
I'm just pointing out what the law is.
It may come as a surprise to you that I don't have the statutes memorized, but I can try to find that out for you, and I'll get on my laptop now to try to find out, but I don't have an immediate answer.
I would like to respond to my colleague from District 5, who I will generously assume was distracted while I was speaking. Children in the West End and Old Louisville, this is what I said before, and it's easy for me to repeat myself because I have written notes, are astronomically more likely to be impacted by lead poisoning. I will diverge from my original written statement to explain that that includes white children, black children. It includes the children that my kids go to school with, that attend Brandeis Elementary. That includes their peers that rent homes in the city of Old Louisville, the district of Old Louisville, rather. It includes white kids in Portland. It includes black kids in Shawnee. It includes black kids in Russell. It includes white kids in Russell. It impacts every aspect of their lives, how they perform in school, how they relate to their peers and their teachers. Children with lead poisoning are much, much more likely to make poor decisions in life, more likely to become adults who are arrested and incarcerated. They're more likely to be violent with their loved ones and others, and they're more likely to be victims of violence. This damage knows no race at all. All children who encounter lead are harmed and damaged. There is no protection offered by status. There's no protection offered by class. There's no protection offered by sexual orientation or race. What we do have is a situation where the children most impacted by any reduction in our efforts to protect them from lead poisoning are more likely to be poor children, and statistically speaking, because of the ages of homes, because of the rental density, because of a myriad of factors largely related to redlining and the past sins of economic oppression to black people, much more likely that black children will be affected, which is a tragedy, it is a crime, it is a stain on our conscience, and one that I feel very deeply, again, as someone who represents Park Hill, Algonquin, and Old Louisville, areas that are extremely affected by lead poisoning. We have a responsibility to protect all of those children, regardless of race, class, sexual orientation, or any other differentiation, but it is important for us to recognize that these sins disproportionately impact the oppressed people of our community, which, yes, includes black children in the West End, poor white kids in Portland, poor white kids in District 12. That's what I'm speaking about.
Councilman Piagentini, you're next in the queue.
Thank you. Obviously a lot of people want to throw around name calling as if, somebody's trying to put kids on a bus without brakes. Funny thing is, we actually don't have a law that requires those buses to have their brakes inspected. It's just a matter of procedure that the bus company does, which is a private business, by the way. So with that said, what this does, it does not take away any of the tools It does not change any of the penalties in the existing legislation. I have emails from Public Health with the precise numbers of how many reports we get of elevated blood lead levels per year. It is less than 500 a year. That's of any level. And we confirmed with Family Health Centers and other of our great local FQHCs who are largely supporting precisely the communities that many are talking about here, where lead levels are the highest. They test every single child that walks in the door. They report every single instance of any elevated blood level to public health. So 500 cases a year. If we implement the existing law, it requires us to look at 50,000 properties. The issue is focus. The issue is limited resources. We have no ability to do that type of work. It'd be like finding a needle in a haystack versus using the training and tools we have at our disposal to focus. And what this bill allows is that any elevated blood lead level, it allows us to investigate. And if lead is found in the home, remediation is required. If a code inspector proactively sees any evidence, they can then also require the test to be done. That is basically the same thing we're doing now. It's just that we're focusing on the properties in the areas that are the problem, the 1%, the 2%, rather than wasting time and wasting resources and wasting money on the other 50,000 properties that have never had any evidence of issues. That is just a misallocation of resources, and again, it sets up a circumstance where it assumes everybody's guilty. Public Health right now has a database of properties that they believe are at-risk properties. Let's go hard after them. But that is a very, very small group of properties in this city. I'm leaving all those tools in place. I'm leaving the penalties in place. The only difference is, are we going to focus and go after those properties, or are we going to waste time on literally tens of thousands of properties that have never had an issue and have no evidence of being the problem? Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilwoman McCraney, you're next in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, when I first heard about this amendment or the opportunity to change this ordinance, and the subsequent debate or argument that something is better than nothing, I thought to myself, yeah, that makes sense. But as I read through it, and as I started hearing from constituents, I thought to myself, first of all, I don't take very kindly to threats. And if that is how our state legislator is going to operate in 2025, I will have no part of it. Now, if you come to me and you say we need to change something for regulation's sake, so it makes sense for this community, then I'm going to listen. But if you come to me and say we have to do it because we've been threatened that if we don't do it, they're going to do something to make sure that we don't have the ordinance at all, that is disturbing to me. I don't operate under those conditions. I don't want us to operate under those conditions. And I hope that that is not why we're doing this. So I really want our entire council to take a step back and let's look at this in its entirety when we have opportunity. Not on the floor, not as an amendment on top of an amendment, but let's table this and let's discuss it sensibly and with some level of time to where we can all get on board, because absolutely we need this ordinance, and anything less than what we already have is probably not a good thing, but maybe there's some opportunity to tweak it, and I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to take a deep dive and tweak it, but I'm not willing to vote on this tonight on the fly. I ask us, and I am calling for the opportunity to table.
There has already been a motion to table, and so motion to reconsider the table then.
That's exactly what I want. Motion to reconsider, table.
Mr.
Excuse me,
President, point of order.
Point of order, Mr. President. The motion to reconsider needs to be done by somebody who voted on the winning side of the tabling motion.
And let's just take a look.
Councilwoman McCraney voted yes to table, and that was on the not winning side, sorry. We would have to have someone that was voted no.
Anyone here voted no to table earlier that would like to make a motion of reconsideration?
I would like to reconsider or restate. I would like for us to consider sending this back to the committee.
Now, that's a new motion.
Thank you.
Okay, that's not debatable, I believe. So the end result is this. It is debatable. Anyone want to debate sending it back to committee, or let's just have a vote? Let's roll call it. A yes vote is to send it back to committee, and no vote keeps it here on the floor.
Councilmember Mulvey Woolridge?
No.
Councilmember Herndon? Oh, I see you, sir. I'm sorry. Don't mean to rush you. Councilmember Parker? I have your no. All right. Mr. President, you have 10 yes votes and 15 no votes.
That motion fails. The next in the queue is Councilman Bratcher.
Yeah, I just briefly want to say that I came from the supermajority that everybody hates around here. And not everybody, but it's not threats. They have constituents too, and their constituents are speaking to them just like they speak to us. And they're representing their area. And my friend in District 10, I've been listening to her speeches for 4 or 5 years. She's very bright, I think the world of her, really. But I've been listening to her nice speeches, and she brought her props tonight. But she's never got anything passed. But let me tell you what, if this does not pass tonight, I guarantee you that they will wipe it completely off our books. They are the state. We are the Metro Council. We are a creature of the state KRS. That means that they answer to their constituents at the state level, and it's something that we really shouldn't be playing around with. If we want to save something, let's vote yes on this bill tonight. Thank you.
Councilman Purvis, you're next in my queue.
First of all, I'd like to apologize to my colleagues for being upset. Secondly, I didn't mention race. My colleague did, and I thought the comment was very condescending and very insulting. And so it angered me to say that we are violent because of. And I don't think it's fair that we have to hear the statistics of his wife's studies. You know, I applaud his wife, and I'm happy that she's completing her medical degree, and I'm sure she'll be a fine physician. But Councilman Bratcher, thank you for explaining the simplicity of state government versus local government. It does concern me that if we do not vote this, if we are not in favor of this, the bottom line is they have the power and we do not. Everyone knows how I feel about my democratic principles. However, I am not blind to the fact that we are the minority as far as the state goes. As I said earlier, I would rather have 50% instead of 0. It's not the 100% that I want, but I cannot live with the fact that I have poor people in my district that live in homes that were built before 1978 and the majority of these people possibly are exposed to lead. And these are both black and white people that I represent. So I don't really go with party politics. I serve the people. I don't serve the party. So this is why I am supporting this legislation, because I need to offer my constituents some type of resolution in case they are affected by lead. Thank you.
Colleagues, I want to make sure that we're all clear here. If you're in the queue, let's speak to new parts of this debate, not rehashing anything that's already been spoken about. Councilwoman Parrish Wright, you're next in the queue, and you have the floor, madam.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. And I am speaking to the new parts. You know, I think that we're taking a gamble, and it's not fair to the people. This feels very rushed. Folks obviously want to make a decision. Some people could be tired of being here. But 500 children being poisoned is way too many. I'm not okay with whatever those numbers are. These are bodies. These are people. These are human lives. And whatever Frankfurt decides, we can litigate that once they decide it. But we do not have to move and let them bully us. I'm not here to play games. I don't think any of this is fun. I don't hate Republicans. I have friends that are Republican. I never hate Republicans. I'm disappointed in the decision-making of Republicans with a party that says it doesn't like government overreach, but constantly overreaches in Louisville. And that's a shame that we are participating in that, because we don't have to, no matter if they're state legislator or not. And every 2 years, they have elections. And every 4 years, we have elections. And when we tell the people what's happening and we show them in our decision-making, then they get to make the decision. Over 28,000 people in my district, not Frankfurt, is who I am here to represent. And if a party that always touts, we want less government overreach, we want more decision-making, why do they constantly try to take our decisions away? Because they're working their plan. I'm not a part of that. I want people to live and survive today. I want kids to be safe and have the housing they need. I was born in 1977, so every apartment, because I just became a homeowner in 2018, so every apartment I ever rented, I had to sign lead poisoning awareness paperwork every time. I don't know if any of you have had to rent. That's the cost of business. That's a part of it, because lead poisoning kills and causes damage. That's the proven science. We have the data, we have the science, and one life is too many. So yes, 500 is a real number, especially in our neighborhoods. Why are we letting them tell us what to do? We are elected as a council. If people just wanted state government, we wouldn't have a local council. It's 26 of us. There's threats that if we keep going, they're going to shrink our districts. They're going to do all these things. Well, to me, we're on a slippery slope either way we go. I'd rather stand and survive by fighting for the people and everything that we do. And too many of Louisvillians have told us, do not support this. It's not about friendships. It's not about, I only like the R's or I only like the D's. The problem is lead poisoning has been determined for many years to be an issue. And we know that we need to make the right decisions. And some of us do have older homes in our district. Our house was built in 1955. And so we should be making decisions for the people who are living right now. I wasn't scared of the red wave. I'm still not scared of what they may do. In my experience from being a lobbyist and having to go to Frankfurt, they don't have enough time and political will to get this done. And if we do this, we're giving them the power to do that. I don't believe that they are the most powerful. I believe the people are. I'm not accepting that. I don't accept what they do, and I don't accept bullies. Never in my life have I, and never in my life will. So I think that we need to think about the people, the kids. Some of you are parents. How can you be okay with this? And even if it's not your kids, it could be your kids' friends, your cousins, your family members impacted by this. Your decision-making right now is telling you where you are standing and what you should be doing. And if you're going against what's best for the greater good, because that's what we're really talking about. I don't care about the pockets of landlords. I care about the people who live in these residencies. And we are more than 36,000 affordable housing units short. So anything that's new and being built, it wouldn't even fall under this guideline. but we have a lot of standing structures that this applies to. Everybody else is going to be paperwork and registration. So let's do what's right by the people and not pass this ordinance, or because if it is going to hurt one person or two people or 500 people, that's too many. Let us litigate whatever they decide. Put the ball back in their court. Thank you.
Councilman Winkler.
Thank you. While I appreciate the comments that the state lawmakers are responding to the needs of their constituents, which I totally agree. I mean, they do respond to the needs of their constituents. I do think it's worth pointing out that none of the sponsors are from Louisville. And so I don't understand why, and if we say, well, this bill is actually not targeting Louisville, it's targeting the entire state, I'll give you that argument, but then why are they not going to move it forward based on what Louisville does? I mean, that makes no sense whatsoever unless this bill is exclusively designed to preempt action in Louisville by people not from Louisville. So let's call it what it is, right? Again, I think that, if we think about the original lead ordinance that we've got before us, that was drafted over months and months of work where we worked with all of the impacted constituencies. Okay, we held it actually at council for 2 meetings to have additional meetings with the constituent groups. They were satisfied with the outcome. We voted unanimously in support of that ordinance, right? If there really is interest in dialogue and solving this problem, I see no issue with waiting 2 weeks, working through this, understanding what we're doing, working through the nuances, rather than trying to jam this down with significant amendments this evening. I just think that's bad practice and bad policy. And again, if this really is something that we're working towards, and it's not targeting Louisville, and I should point out, too, that the Kentucky League of Cities is also opposed to this ordinance, right? Or not our ordinance, the House bill. We should spend the time, we should do the appropriate due diligence, not rush, work through this, and solve the problem in the correct way. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilman Lininger.
I'd like to speak to the 500 number that's been thrown out there on the cases of lead poisoning documented by the city. I have been assured by members of the health department that that is a gross undercount. One of the factors of the gross undercount is that parents are the ones who initiate the lead testing. These harms, as I have pointed out, are generational. Parents are affected by lead poisoning. They're raising kids in the environment that they were raised in. Their children are being affected by lead poisoning. Parents don't have equal access to information. They don't have equal access to means. There are many children who have lead poisoning in our city that we don't know about because the parents aren't fighting for lead testing for their children, and it's not the fault of those children who are being harmed, and it's honestly not the fault of those parents either. It is our responsibility as responsible representatives in their government to protect them, to do what we can to mitigate these harms, which again are generational and impact our community in different ways, differently. I won't rehash my arguments. I think that they've been clearly stated, and I don't see any reason to put the focus on a spat between myself and another member of this body when we should be discussing the policy that I do not support, and other members may, of reducing the power and efficacy of our lead abatement. We have to protect those children. We have to work together to protect those children. These are real lives we're talking about. Again, that 500 number is imaginary. It is a gross undercount of the actual damage and harm being done every day to children in our community.
Councilman Owen.
Thank you, President Ackerson. I haven't said anything tonight. This ordinance has caused me more heartburn probably than maybe any other since I've been on council. The first thing I want to say is within a month when I came onto council, groups started reaching out to me about overturning this ordinance. And I did not react proactively to that request for engagement. What I basically said to them was, let's see how the ordinance that's been passed goes, and then I agreed that there were issues that needed to be fixed. But I said, let's see how it goes, and then maybe we can pick up that conversation. And I feel terribly about not engaging with them and not having that conversation at that time, because I think it's possible we could have prevented all of this. We could have prevented Frankfurt from getting involved. I have not been, I don't appreciate some of the misinformation that some of the groups out there have presented. I never appreciate that on either side, but there's been a lot of misinformation, and I don't appreciate that. I don't appreciate the sky is falling tactics either, because I do think, unlike a lot of the rhetoric, whatever happens here tonight, it's not going to be, probably not going to be as extreme as some of the rhetoric that's happening here. I grew up in a household where my mom was a property manager. That's what she did her entire career, and she was very, very proud of the units that she rented to people. And they always did the right thing by people. Well, I can't say, I mean, she always tried to do the best she could by the people who rented her apartments. And so I came from that property management background. There are some bad actors out there, and how we target those bad actors and figure out how to, I do think that the majority of the cases, and 500 is too many, 100 is too many, 10 is too many, but I do think that most of the cases are within a certain group of bad actors and their units, that if we could take the rental registry and could take the information that we have currently, we could work together as a group and target those people and try to bring that number down to zero. So the reason this has been hard for me is I do think that this is not good policy in general. I do think that we are submitting more kids to potential lead-based poisoning by doing what we're proposing to do tonight than what we had done previously. I don't trust Frankfurt at all. At all. But this isn't the first preemption fight we've had with them either. The source of income bill last year came and went, and nothing we could do about that one. I also don't think that if we roll over tonight, it doesn't mean that we can't fight like hell against the next preemption. It doesn't, to me, it's not mutually exclusive, and I don't necessarily mean it's rolling over. So the truth of the matter is, I've gone back and forth tonight because I really don't know what's best to do. I've spoken to Cassie Chambers Armstrong multiple times this week. She spent an unbelievable amount of time last time getting this bill passed, brought a lot of people to the table, and ultimately I was taking the lead from Cassie, who told me, take something which is better than nothing. She and I have gone back and forth as well over that. I still don't know what the right call is. What I will say is I don't have to trust Frankfurt or any other Republicans to trust some of the people in this room. I don't want to be Frankfurt. I want to be a Metro Council where we can work together on issues and get stuff done. So I think I am likely to end up, as much as it, I mean, I can't tell you how much it pains me, but I am likely to end up supporting the bill that's before us, in part because the woman that put this bill together in the first place said it may be better to take that deal than no deal at all, and she's in Frankfurt now. But also because I've spoken to the administration, and I've spoken to my colleague, Councilman Piagentini, and I really appreciate the work that he has put in on this. It's clear that he has spent a lot of time on this, and I appreciate that. And so I want to say that no matter what happens tonight, I think I'm going to end up voting for it, even though I've gone back and forth. I would have liked to have tabled it. I voted to table it a few minutes ago. I think I'm going to end up voting for it, but I want to say tonight, right now, that anybody that wants to work with me and anybody else to find out who the bad actors are and target those bad actors using the tools that we currently have, let's do it. Thank you.
Councilman Rui, you're next to queue.
Thank you very much. I just want to say that I'm really shocked at the idea that it's only 500 children every year. Only? Let me see. If those 500 children fell off a piece of playground equipment and got a concussion, you'd be up in arms. If it was 500 children who had measles, you'd be up in arms. But because it's lead poisoning, which is silent, and we don't know about it unless somebody proactively tests for it, it's not that big a deal. That really concerns me. Yeah, it's way more than 500, and 500 is a long way from only. I realize this is going to be a very long night. My intention is still to vote no, and I'm going to turn it over to the next person.
Councilman Bratcher, you have the floor.
have a question. It's my understanding that the original bill that this body passed carved out metro housing. Can anybody answer that? Can I make a question on that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. Yes, the current ordinance has an exemption number 7, housing units that a government entity or housing authority owns, operates, or manages are those exempted by federal, state, or local law. I did not include that exemption in this version. So government-owned housing is now included and subject to the same standards, but the original ordinance exempted them.
So I'd like to finish if I could, sir. Go ahead.
Well, I need to look this up, but I disagreed with that particular exclusion as well, because I think that we should be, as a government, required to do the same things. My understanding, though, after asking the question, is that public housing units have a federal guideline that they have that includes them that was beyond what this was requiring. So while the exemption looks terrible, right, on the face of it, I don't think it was exactly that.
If I can respond, Mr. President. That might apply to the tail end of the sentence, exempted by federal, state, or local law. And frankly, if they're exempted by federal or state law, we can write anything under the sun. They're exempted, right? The beginning of the sentence is the issue. Housing units that a government entity or housing authority owns. There are plenty of housing units owned by government entities that are considered local. They are not owned by HUD. They are not owned by some of these federal agencies. They are not necessarily subject to the same federal rules. So you can think of any of the properties that we do related to affordable housing. There's an argument to be made that a lot of them are owned or have an ownership interest by this government entity. And so there's a question about whether or not they are exempt. So I agree with you that certain properties, I'll pick on, again, HUD properties. They already had federal guidance. But this government is getting more and more into funding housing, and as a result of that, that housing could be exempt. So there are not every single public housing in the city of Louisville is subject to the same federal regulations. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, I mean, okay, we got federal government now, and we got state government now, and we got metro government now. So just so everybody has that civics lessons of how it works.
Next in the queue is Councilman Reed.
Thank you, Mr. President. And so far through this robust discussion, we've had a motion to table that failed. We've had a motion to reconsider that failed. We've had a motion to send to committee that has failed. And I'm going to do something that I have not done in 9 years. I'm going to call the question.
Is there a second on calling the question? Second. All right, the question's been called. Madam Clerk, open the roll call. Yeah, we're going to roll call it because no matter what I say.
Councilmember Mulvey Woolridge.
Yes.
Councilmember Hawkins. Councilmember Purvis. Oh, very good. Yes, I'm ready. You have 16 yes votes and 9 no votes.
That motion fails. Call the question. That call the question takes a supermajority, does it not? Next in the queue is Councilman Piagentini. Withdraw. Next in the queue is going to be Councilwoman Purvis. Nope.
Yeah.
Aha.
Right. I've not said much tonight, but I'm going to echo off of my colleague, Councilman Owen. I got a call. It's not about Democrat, Republican, any of that. I got a call from Cassie, who represented District 8. I talked to the current council member that represents that district, who asked me to support this. And I do what I say I'm going to do. If I say I'm going to support something, that's what I'm going to support. I've not had many at all from my district. Several other districts has contacted my office, but not many from my district. I'm struggling just a little bit because, I see a lot of division here, and, I hope we can live to fight another day. It's a struggle for me because I'm a very passionate person, and I see my colleagues are passionate, and it's okay. But I believe in, doing what's right for the people, but I also believe that the people that select the representatives and put them in that space knows what's best for the district. So with that being said, I'm going to trust the judgment of Cassie Chambers Armstrong and Councilman Wena Weber. And as of right now, I'm still going to be in support of this.
Next in the queue is Councilwoman McCraney.
I withdraw. I'm just sick and tired of being sick and tired. That was Fannie Lou Hamer.
Next in the queue is Councilwoman Parrish Wright.
Yeah, I was initially going to respond that there are, government housing has a federal policy that already has this regulation and more in place. There has not been any housing as somebody who's had to seek all types of housing here, not just government, that we didn't deal with the lead and the paperwork and making sure that signing those leases meant that there was an understanding if that property was before 1978. So I do want to say there's things already operating. My issue is that if there's issues with parts of the ordinance, that's to me, that the original ordinance, that should be dealt with in another manner. I think this feels very rushed and very, it's neglectful of a lot of the things that the people have talked about, the people are asking us to do something about. There's no need, as Councilwoman Raymond has said, there's no need to do this right now. It's just weird. I feel like the pressure is there and we don't have to do this right now. So what is the rush to try to deal with this right now? But it looks like because all these other measures to stop it have failed that we got to go to a vote. I just think that we don't have to roll over. I don't understand why that is the option for most people. And I think that we are doing our community, our city, a disservice at this moment if we allow this to happen. And I just want to be on record to say I'm still a strong no. I do appreciate the work of people who are allowed to be a part of the process, like Councilman Piagentini was, but too many of us weren't not a part of this. It's just been rushed, and it hasn't been respectful for all of our decision making. So you've been a part of that process. You've been allowed to do it and participate, and too many of us have not. And I'm not comfortable with doing that. So I think that we need to make sure we are, again, considering our constituents, our district, our responsibility to do what's best for them and what is happening next. And so, yes, I'm still want to state that because I feel like we have to keep saying it because I don't know what's happening here, but whatever's happening is not the will of the majority of our Louisvillians who are depending on us. Thank you.
I apologize for rising to speak again. I'm sure everyone's sick of hearing from me. I want to make one final appeal, and I promise this is the final one. I want to appeal nakedly to your self-interest, to venal self-interest. Your constituents do not want you to vote for this. And when you are going door to door or on mailers, when this vote comes up, and this vote is going to come up, you are going to spend 20 and 30 minutes explaining the nuance of why you had to vote for bad policy that harmed children forever, when what your constituents want is for you to vote no and for you to fight. That is what your constituents want, and you are going to have to answer to those constituents for the members in odd districts, District 1, District 5, District 9. The day that you have to answer those questions on the doors, questions in mailers, things people will not forget, that day is coming very quickly. We are less than a year away from that next primary, and you will have to justify at 20 and 30-minute segments what is being accused in one sentence. I wouldn't envy that position. I appeal to your self-interest. Vote no.
Seeing no one else in the queue, Madam Clerk, open the roll.
Councilmember Mulvey Woolridge.
Yes.
Councilmember Purvis. And Councilmember Hawk. Oh, I see yours, yes. Ready. Mr. President, you have 17 yes votes and 8 no votes.
The ordinance is adopted. The next item on our business will be new business. As you leave the chambers, do so quietly so the clerk may read the new business. If council members wish to make announcements, please stick around and we'll deal with those after the new business. New business comprises of items 57 through 65. Will the clerk read those items and their assignments to committee?
Item 57, the following legislation was assigned to Appropriations Committee. Item 57, the ordinance appropriating $13,300 from District 20 Neighborhood Development Funds to the Louisville Metro Police Department for 2 flock cameras to be installed in Dunbar Springs and Silver Oak subdivisions. Item 58, an ordinance appropriating $5,123.40 from District 3 Neighborhood Development Funds to the Office of Management and Budget to the Trees Louisville Incorporated for the landscape maintenance costs for the Sheridan Cemetery. The following legislation was sent to the Budget Committee. Item 59, an ordinance amending ordinance number 100, series 2024, relating to the fiscal year 2024-2025 operating budget by transferring $20,000 from the Neighborhood Development Fund District 3 to the Louisville Metro Council General Operations District 3. The following legislation was sent to Equity, Community Affairs, Housing and Health, and Education Committee. Item 60, a resolution honoring Reverend Dr. Godfrey S. Ellis by dedicating the northwest corner of 19th and Cedar Streets as Reverend Dr. Jeffrey S. Ellis Way in his honor. The following legislation was sent to Labor Economic Development Committee. Item 61, a resolution approving the granting of the local incentives to the Atomic Brands Incorporated and any subsequent assignees or approved affiliates thereof pursuant to KRS 6, Chapter 154, Subchapter 32. Item 62, a resolution pursuant to the capital and operating budget orders approving the appropriations to the fund the following non-competitive, non-negotiated professional service contract for the office sale and the safety, healthy neighborhoods concerning positive facilitation of the youth development, prevention, diversion, and treatment for the Louisville Youth Continuum and Care Project. The following legislation was sent to the Planning and Zoning Committee. Item 63, ordinance related to the zoning property located at 8915 Old Boystown Road, containing approximately 2.2 acres and being in Louisville Metro. Case number 24, zone 00113. Item 64, ordinance related to the zoning of property located at 11401 Race Road, containing approximately 2.4 acres and being in Louisville Metro, case number 24 zone 0115. The following legislation was sent to the Public Safety Committee. Item 65, a resolution urging the Louisville Metro government to formally acknowledge the documented harms of Louisville Metro Police Department and encourage the Louisville Metro Police Department to build trust in the community. Read in full.
Mr. President, I have announcements. Thank you. Well, we need something to smile about after this long meeting. I want to tell you that we have a collaboration between District 3 office and our amazing Louisville Metro government clerks who are doing amazing work. They're the real engine. We have partnered for a clothing and supply drive on the first floor of our building here in Metro Hall. You can see a sign that has clothing and supply drive where you can donate all kinds of clothing that are being given to people who are being released from jail, who are unhoused, and who are dealing with poverty and all kinds of things. Items needed are chapstick, comb and brush, travel size first aid kits, alcohol wipes, disposable washcloths, bottled water, dry shampoo, bus passes, phones and chargers if you have some, prepaid cell phones. We need clean men's pants and shirts, and for women as well. If you have any of those items, you can drop them off 5 days a week right here, 601 West Jefferson Street on the first floor. There's a sign and a big basket for you to put those things in. You can also call 502-574-1103 or 502-574-3902 to schedule that pickup, that drop-off of your items, all right? The other thing is, we're having Amnesty Court 3.0. Many groups have come together. This is free to the public. It's an opportunity for people to deal with their old citations, warrants, fines, fees, and bench warrants. You can get them cleared during this amnesty period, but you have to see if your case qualifies. The deadline is tomorrow, February the 28th. So please help spread the word. If you have any questions, you can go to LouisvilleProsecutors.org/redocket to apply, and they will let you know. And if you check yes, you'll be able to be connected to ongoing wraparound services provided by the many partners who have come together for our third 3.0 Amnesty Court. This is a great opportunity for people who are dealing with old issues to have those resolved. There is a limited amount of money to help pay old fines and fees. If you are someone that can't register online, feel free to call 502-272-0056, and the county attorney, the Jefferson County attorney, the Jefferson County Clerk of Courts will direct you in the right direction and make sure that you're signed up. But please spread the word. You must sign up by close of business tomorrow, February 28th. And the Amnesty Court, that will give you your date if you qualify. It will happen in March. So make sure that you spread the word. Jefferson County Amnesty Court 3.0 for people to resolve their old cases and fines and fees. Thank you.